Welcome on the news end of the AM show, and we start by talking health. And pregnant women in Kurugu in the west, Mamprusi West municipality of the northeast region are forced to walk more than 15 kilometers from their community to access antenatal and delivery services elsewhere due to the absence of a healthcare post. The community health post in the area has been abandoned because of a lack of equipment to operationalize it. Pregnant women in labor particularly are bearing the brunt as they have to travel on a bad road via tricycles to Wulugu for care. Correspondent Eliasu Tanko has more in this report.
A large farming community located in a meander of the White Volta River near Wulugu and 23 kilometers away from the municipal capital Wale Wale in the northeast region. The community since its beginning has been bedeviled by many socio-economic problems with little attention from the state authorities. The community members who live here are poor and largely uneducated, but one of the hard-working groups of people known for their large cultivation of sorghum, millet and maize to feed the nation. One of the most pressing challenges facing this poor community, however, is the lack of health center to serve as source of medical care for the residents. Attempts had been made in 2015 by the then NDC administration to establish a health center, which led to the construction of this chief's facility in 2016, but the facility had completely been abandoned after the government of the New Patriotic Party came to power in 2017. In 2020, following a JoyNews report, the municipal authorities attempted to equip the facility and operationalize it, but those efforts were aborted after winning again the general election in that year. As a result, pregnant women and children in particular in the community are bearing the brunt as they have to travel on a tricycle and sometimes by walking 17 kilometers to Wulugu for delivery and other healthcare services, whilst emergency services are referred to the government hospital in Wale Wale. Because the health post here isn't functioning, you have to go around to beg for a motorbike anytime you are going for antenatal care. Most often, we walk to Wulugu when we don't get a motorbike. On your way, sometimes you get help by motorists. Those with no access to a tricycle have to travel on a motorbike on the bad road connecting the community to Wulugu and the rest of the municipality. We are appealing to the government to equip the facility in this community to end or reduce our plight on the road. Pregnant women in labor are carried on motorbikes even at night to Wulugu to be taken care of. This 32-year-old woman, Abu Hanifa, says due to the lack of a healthcare facility in the community, she was forced 3 years ago to deliver her baby on the road while on her way to the hospital in Wale Wale for delivery. She's carrying another pregnancy, which is 7 months old now. She says she's afraid of the plight she would have to go through to deliver. Due to the severe pains on that day, I had to deliver my baby on the way. The pains were unbearable, which made me very weak. Even before we managed to get to the hospital with my baby, it was a very bad experience for me, which I do not wish to go through again. Inside the facility, only 2 beds in addition to 2 wooden benches are serving all kinds of patients brought to the facility. In addition, the facility lacks laboratory and medical supplies. 2 staff are managing the facility without a midwife to attend to pregnant patients. Cases are sometimes recorded under this tree whilst at the facility. This man was brought there after he complained of being dizzy, and this was how he was attended to. In response, the municipal chief executive for the area, Arimiya Somolaki Basintali, said efforts were in place to address the challenges in the community. He, however, called for support from NGOs and donor organizations.
The best are not enough. What we provided as an assembly on specific to Chief's compound is there, but where they are as a remote community, We need to get more beds so that at least they can detain more of the people here. Government alone cannot do the work. We need more support to come. I have about 126 communities in West Memphis. I'm going around all of them. I have more than 17 chiefs compounds in the municipality. It means a lot. Last time we gave them a motorbike and some other logistics to start. So as time goes on, we'll try to solve the problem. But indeed, the community needs some support. And I am aware, as the municipal chief executive, we are going to work on it. I will collaborate with the Ghana Health Service to see how best we can make this place an enviable place.
Reporting from Kurugu, Elias Sutanko for JoyNews.
Well, staying on health, experts say intermittent fasting during breastfeeding is risky as it can be a challenge to meeting the nutritional requirements of new mothers and newborns. Now, with Muslims across the world obliged to fast during the holy month of Ramadan, what is expected of this group of women? In the following report, Anas Sabit seeks answers as he engages experts in health and in Islam.
Fasting from dawn to dusk may affect the biochemical or nutrient content of the breast milk to a certain extent. Experts say fasting the month of Ramadan for lactating mothers may be a bit risky as it can be a challenge to meet caloric, nutritional and fluid requirements for new mothers as well as their babies. But as Muslims observe this holy month, how many people are aware of these developments with limited information on the subject? We engage a public health nurse at the Teachman Holy Family Hospital, Zufau Ahmed, to throw more light on this.
Fasting in breastfeeding and pregnant women is not advisable. In either case, if the woman who want to fast should seek the help of a health worker. When a woman who is breastfeeding fasts, there's the likelihood that it will reduce caloric intake and also water intake. So obviously, it can cause dehydration. And we know that milk, more than 50% of milk is made up of water. So if a woman should be dehydrated, it means that it will affect the milk supply. So the baby wouldn't be getting enough breast milk.
Zulfao tells me that aside the effects of this on the baby, the breastfeeding mother is equally affected as the baby would always want to lunch on the breast milk of the mother.
It can as well affect the woman because naturally a baby would want to breastfeed. So if the baby is not able to breastfeed, you are not able to also produce this nutrient, the baby will always want to lunch on the breast milk. So the little nutrients in the breast milk, the baby is taking it. Your body is also fighting for those nutrients. So there's a likelihood you can have anemia deficiency because these micronutrients, some of them help in the buildup of red blood cells.
The poor child, according to Zulfao, is going to be the most affected as the situation stands a chance of affecting the baby's IQ.
As we said that a breastfeeding mother who fasts is likely to have low micronutrients. It means that obviously the baby won't get these micronutrients. And these micronutrients are very important to brain growth.
Now, in our next story, a beneficiary of the Disability Fund in the Nanumba North Municipality of the Northern Region, Malam Albert, has admonished his colleague beneficiaries to stop spending money they receive lavishly and use it for the purpose for which they were given. He says it's common to see some of his colleagues using money they receive for other purposes. Malam Albert said this on the sidelines of the disbursement of the Disability Fund in Bimbilla.
The Nanumba North Municipal Assembly has over the years supported persons with disabilities with cash, farm input, fridges, among others, to help empower them economically. So far, 390 persons have been supported. Speaking on the sidelines of the disbursement, a beneficiary, Malam Isaac, said the monies is supposed to help them get off the streets and live decent lives and not spend lavishly.
Come off and then they are still begging. They use money by dress, drink. You go and see some disability, see there's a beer bar and buy a drink and buy a drink for their friends. So you came to this as another this will support you that you also to be with somebody in the future. Why would you use that money to buy a drink for your colleagues? If sort of your colleague to buy something for you and then you are a sickness person, you are buying things for them. Those who are doing that, they should stop doing it. It's no good. You go in there, go start begging, and then there's a store going there, beer buy a drink and booze. It's no fair that disability to drink and booze. It's no fine.
Another beneficiary, Ajay Gifty, tax beneficiaries who still parade themselves on the streets as beggars to stop the act and stop embarrassing persons with disability.
I think then that they shouldn't beg again. They should stop begging. Those who come and collect, they should stop begging. And those who didn't collect, they should come and collect and stop begging. They shouldn't beg again. If they have been begging like this, they have spoiled our destiny because it's not good. They should stop begging. I think then that they should stop begging at the roadside.
The municipal chief executive for the Nanumba North Municipality, Abdullah Yakub, said some of the beneficiaries are doing very well.
We are not giving them the money to just go and sit down and spend. Before you are giving the money, a form is filled. You have made a request to the committee that this is what I want to do. The committee sits, evaluate your request and approve an amount for you. Some say that they want to go into farming, some want to do business, and some want to do other things. There is always a monitoring committee that goes around to see whether the monies that we are giving you, you are putting it into what you say you are coming to use it to. Some are doing very well, especially those who are into smoke weaving. If you go, you see their shops and they are doing well. They will not come back here and request.
The Director of Social Welfare, Stephen Mensah, charged Ghanaians to support persons with disability to live decent lives.
As I said earlier, this district we have 1,257 persons with disability, and we have supported over the past 3 years 390. So we have backlog of a lot of people persons with disability who we're supposed to support. So we normally put a mechanism in place to monitor them. However, we find out that some of them, after giving these things, they go back to the street. And this has been our challenge. But we are trying our best to see how we can do that. And I'm entreating everybody. It is a collective effort for us to help our disabled people to live a dignified life.
Let's turn our gaze to the season of Easter now. And after more than 20 years of feasting with the homeless, the Joy FM Easter Soup Kitchen made a stop at the Wager Leprosarium. Management and on-air personalities wined, dined, and danced with residents of the shelter. Authorities of the Wager Leprosarium are calling for urgent help with essential items like food, medical materials, and financial aid as they strive to keep up with the ballooning cost demands so they can properly cater for residents.
It's the Wager Leprosarium, and this year Joy FM Easter Soup Kitchen is here. Just to tell you a little bit about the Leprosarium before I talk to the managers itself. The Leprosarium has been operating since 1950, well over 70 years now. And this is a place where people living with leprosy come to seek refuge. It is one of many shelters across the country, but this is its headquarters and arguably the largest of its installment. But this year, Joy FM has chosen on Easter Monday to spend a full day with the residents here. And this is part of its Easter Soup Kitchen project that has been running since the year 2000. They are here to spend the day, to dine and bond with the residents here.
Campbell. He founded the Lepers Aid Committees more than 30 years ago.
99.7 FM.
So, Father, thank you for allowing us to share Easter Monday with you.
We are so happy that you've come here to share such joy and happiness with all our dear residents here. The way they've been stigmatized over the years is awful. For this little girl, we sent a team up to Wa to distribute food. And in their distribution of food, they found this little girl. She was abandoned. The family have abandoned her. The mother ran away. The grandfather said she's not human because she's leprosy, and he wanted to do rituals. So they just abandoned her. We took her here, and we've had to bring her to so many doctors since she came here. One being a psychiatrist, because she wouldn't talk. She just talks a little. She's learning how to talk. But she was so traumatized the way they treated her up in the north. Happy. You see, if you make somebody happy, you'll be happy.
Yes.
That's my philosophy. Make somebody happy. Make this little girl happy. And if you make her happy, you'll be happy.
Thank you, Father.
So I want people to be happy. So I'm asking, if somebody can sponsor the sports center, the event center, I'd be so happy if somebody can help me to be able to do these things, to make these, they shouldn't suffer. They've gone through too much suffering already. There's stigmatization and marginalization. I mean, one CD a day, it's not enough.
Here, really, we've heard about the place. We've heard Father Campbell talk about the leprosarium. We've used it in news. We've covered stories, but I have never personally been here. And so I'm excited to be here to share. We talk about Christ sacrificing, the ultimate sacrifice. I'm a beneficiary of the sacrifice of Christ. This is what I can do in terms of also share the love of Christ with others.
An opportunity to spend time with people, our friends. Look, I would cherish it always, and that's how come I'm feeling the dance floor. And it's not coming out right, but it's okay. I mean, happy Easter, I love.
You know me, I know you. You know me, I know you don't know me too. I don't know you, I'm sure. Don't be a video. When you get the demo, don't be a video. When you get the demo, if you know me, I know you. If you don't know me too, I don't know you, I say. I'm a man, but I'm a young I have a Esther, and I'm David. I am my bar. The young baby, I am young friend of what Esther. When you got what them, if you know me, I know you. You know me, I know you. You know me too. I don't know you.
Beautiful. Well, staying on that note of Easter, after all the religious activities, all roads led to the Kumasi Rattray Park on Easter Monday for a fun-filled event. The Easter edition of the Love FM Family Party in the park saw scores of family units bonding and making merry. Patrons were treated to exciting activities as they joined in the fun of the season. Love FM's Nanabwachi Adam has more in this report.
The Green Serene Rattray Park in Kumasi was the major attraction of activities to climax the 2023 Easter festivities. The Love FM family party in the park saw over hundreds of families share memorable moments in a fun-filled outing at the biggest outdoor event in Osekum. Children were perhaps the most excited as they participated in dancing competitions, face painting, bouncy castles, electric trains, trampoline, swimming, among other activities. Some patrons were joyous.
It has been fun here. I really like here very much. And I like the way so much games are here. We have been playing around. It seems it's great over here.
It was very fantastic. I very feel happy when I came here.
Oh, really? Have you been able to make friends?
Yeah, many of them.
Oh, wow. What about you? How has it been for you since you came here?
It's excited. I came with my mother and my father, and I make new friends, and it's exciting.
We are 4 in number, myself, my wife, and 2 boys. The activities that we've engaged, the kids have engaged themselves through, is so exciting, and it will remain indelible in their minds. And we also thank the organizers for this program. In fact, we want it to continue every year and then, so that we can bring the family out for a very nice engagement.
We expect this kind of things from them again, because the kids like coming here whenever they are around. So they should keep up doing the good work for us. They should keep on bringing more fun for the kids for us. We are happy seeing them all the time.
The beautiful atmosphere, coupled with finely trimmed grasses and trees at the Ratri Park, was enough motivation for families to come together to eat, drink and chat heartily. The old folks were attracted to live band performances for their listening pleasure and relation. Marketing manager of Love and Insure FM, Isaac Entry, says the audience should expect more exciting events in the coming months.
We should expect big things, big things to happen. We have our traditional events. The party in the park has always been with us. The kids' party has always been with us. But going forward, we'll be coming up with some new events, so people should watch out. And as we would announce, you would always find out that we are the best.
Hooray! Guess what? It has been a fun-filled moment here at the Kumasi Ratri Park. It is the Love FM family party in the park, the Easter edition. For JoyNews, my name is Nana Adam.
It's a wrap for the news. Stay with us. The news review up next. Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. Time now for us to get into the papers, and I'm in good company. I'll be telling you who joins me shortly. That is if you missed the introduction to the show. But this segment is brought to you, all of us, by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. They're offering us free prostate screening for men, free female fertility screening for women. So make tracks to Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. And where can you find them? Here in Accra, they are located at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. Kumasi Kronumabwe here, behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade Anaji Estate, Tema Community 22. Then there's Techiman Hanswa and Siama Enzema. You can reach them via the phone lines on these numbers: 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But we're joined this morning to help us get into the newspapers. Yesterday, it was a barren morning. No newspapers. We had to get into other issues. But this morning, we're in good company. Former Member of Parliament for Kumbungu. I nearly, called him Ras Kumbungu. Ras Mubarak joins the conversation. Mr. Mubarak, a very good morning to you. You would have to unmute. I think I still cannot hear you. Have you pressed the unmute button? Okay, Ras, just hold for me. We'll try to work on that so that we can hear exactly what you're saying. But it's the papers we're going to get into now. We have quite a stack of them here. The Daily Graphic Business, among other papers. We'll see how it goes as we make the arrangements, talking about politics, the economy, and of course, the reason for the season, Jesus Christ and his resurrection in Easter. But let's start with the Daily Graphic newspaper. You know what? Even before we get into the Daily Graphic, I want us to do this. Yesterday, I dilated on this matter together with my guest Suleiman Abrahima, who joined me in the morning. I would like you, the discerning, ordinary Ghanaian, watching me this morning. I free my mind. I share my thoughts. I say what I believe. I want you to do me a favor. You may be one of those people who never go on social media to watch our live feed because you watch it on TV and you never drop a comment. Today, I want you to go on social media, go on JoyNews, Facebook, and drop a message. I want to know what you think about the Agric minister's outburst, the vitriol he spewed. I'm talking about Brian Achampong. Now, we can look at it from different angles. It's one of the matters we're going to be discussing this morning, but I want to get your take. Do you think if you put aside your political lenses, whether NDC or MPP, or whichever other party you support, if you take your political lenses off, put them down, and analyze what he said, do you feel they are apt or inept? Do you feel they are insightful or innocuous, harmless? Do you feel they bode well for our democracy, especially ahead of election 2024, or they do otherwise? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you today. Know what you genuinely think about that issue. But let's get into the daily graphic for starters. And the story is there. Ghana on course for IMF approval. That's according to Ken Oforiatta. Interesting times ahead. Interesting times ahead. Take stress management seriously. Clinical psychologists to employers. And yes, there are people that I think should take this very seriously. Take stress management seriously. Clinical psychologists to employers. In some places, in some circles, in some offices, people don't realize that other people are burdened, they are stressed, and they just keep heaping stress upon them, forgetting that they are human. They are not robots, androids. So that story goes out to such employers. Africa needs global synergies to improve health. That's according to Kweku Ajimameno. Church leaders inspire nation resurrection, hope to overcome life's challenges. That story there on the front page of the Daily Graphic newspaper. On the back page, CDS inaugurates facilities at Jungle Warfare School, and Rigworld Solutions supports New Life Nungwa Children's Home. All of those stories making it into the Daily Graphic newspaper. So let's get some details on that now. And we'll start with page 16 of the Daily Graphic, talking about our likely IMF program. So the Paris Club, a group of bilateral creditors that helps with workable solutions to payment problems faced by debtor nations, will form an official creditor committee this week to look into Ghana's request for financial assurances. Now, the assurances, which come with debt restructuring and further strategic lending, will enable the country to present its program to the IMF board for approval. The Minister of Finance, Ken Oforiatta, who disclosed this to the Daily Graphic in an interview, said the formation of the committee and the financial assurances were to enable the country's program to be laid before the IMF board shortly after the spring meetings. The finance minister further stated that the country was firmly on course for IMF board approval. Ms. Oforiatta and the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison, are leading a high-level Ghana delegation to the World Bank and the IMF spring meetings from April the 10th to the 16th this year in Washington, D.C. Now, on the sides of the meetings, the delegation will meet with members of the Paris Club, China, and other bilateral creditors. Among other agenda items at the spring meetings, Mr. Oforiatta will chair the V20 Interministerial Dialogue on Green Financing for Climate-Vulnerable Nations. The finance minister will also attend meetings focused on re-engineering the global financial architecture to promote geographical inclusion. I'll just say this, IMF program or no IMF program, all the hullabaloo, all the rhetoric about all of this, ordinary Ghanaians are suffering. Yesterday, I had an interaction with a number of young people, and it appears some young people still cannot see beyond their noses. But the reality is that we're suffering, especially as young people. And here, while we cannot lay the blame only on one person, we know how we got here. We know how we borrowed ourselves out of pocket and got here. You cannot spend what you do not have. If you spend what you do not have, you will be in debt, and if you get in debt, your creditor will come to take his pound of flesh, like Shylock did in Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare. And we'll have the situation we find ourselves in. The economic constraints are stifling. And I don't know whether the IMF program will get us a little closer to that stability we need, but Mr. Finance Minister Ken Oforiatta Mr. or Dr. Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Ernest Addison. We need something done fast. Ras Mubarak, can you hear me?
Yes, Benj, a very good morning to you and to our viewers. I hope you had a jolly good break from work.
Well, break from work? You should speak to my producer about that, about any break from work. And but let's move past that one and get into the pertinent issues I've been discussing here. So I've been talking about the IMF program that we are on course to secure. How relevant do you feel that will be, especially as we've wanted to get this for a while? It took a few months to get to a staff level agreement. Then we projected that by end of March, in fact, the president made a statement, we would secure an IMF program. It hasn't happened. We've entered April, and that, the days are going past. What do you make of our IMF deal? What do you make of what we're expecting? And after that, what I was starting with was Brian Echampon's comments in recent times and asking people to share their thoughts on it. What do you make of it? There's a political party position. Your party has issued a statement. But what do you, as an individual, think? And then you can add the IMF bit to it, Mr. Mubarak.
Right, reckless, for someone who's been member of parliament for a while, for someone who is expected to head a very important ministry. You would expect, decorum coming from him, but unfortunately, comments like the ones he made may seem to heighten fears and tensions about the MPP's, intentions towards the 2024 elections. And I think it gives Ghanaians an opportunity, it gives Ghanaians a window to look into which political party clearly means well, in terms of the stability of our country. People's investment, people's livelihood. You do not expect that a party would lose political power and would want to hang on to political power because they can use certain, institutions of state to rig an election.
Is that how you feel? Is that what you feel he was implying there? And how then would, for example, the latest appointments to the Electoral Commission reflect that? Though, mind you, the president has stated, and maybe to some extent, rightly so, that it is the ballot that wins an election, not those at the Electoral Commission. What do you think?
Well, I mean, if you have a very terrible referee who is biased, a referee who is known to be a supporter of one club, you could expect that his biases would show, during a particular match he's officiating. So
how is she biased? Is it because she was appointed by the current administration? You do recall when Dr. Afarijan was at post, there were many who also suggested that because he had been brought in by the erstwhile administration, the Rawlings administration, he had his own biases as well. I mean, that's a deal, a raw deal that all of them have got, from Afarijan to Charlotte Osei to Jean Mensah. So what exactly substantiates your claim?
Some of those who've been appointed have, been shown to have some inclination towards the MPP. And these are legitimate issues that were raised, not just by the NDC, but by the Ghanaian public, that there are indeed several Ghanaians with the credibility, to be at post at the Electoral Commission. And in times like this, when our democracy, even though nearly 30 years, is still at its teething stages, we ought to be very careful in the kinds of appointments that we make, and I think the president has really and truly not affirmed his commitment to advancing our democracy in terms of the caliber of people who have been appointed, and not just the Electoral Commission, but several other institutions of state where people are expected to be, impartial. People are expected to be beyond reproach. People are expected to come to the table with a certain level of credibility, but that is not what we're seeing with this appointments. Well, it's a wake-up call, and I think what ought to happen in the 2024 elections would be for us to have a very convincing win at the polls. I mean, a referee could be as biased as they can, but it's also incumbent on you, it behoves on you, to also put in place the right checks and balances to make sure that in spite of the referees' biases, in spite of the biases that may emanate from commissioners of the Electoral Commission, we still, can do the right thing. We still can win the polls. And that would require for every Ghanaian, Benji, to actually be a Ghanaian, to actually come out in their numbers and vote for whichever party they are interested in, but more preferably to vote for the NDC, because the NDC has, showed commitments towards advancing our country. And everyone watching, every political watcher could see the differences. Now, you were talking a while ago about the economy. We've seen how one political party, whilst in opposition, did make all manner of claims about running the economy prudently. And we've seen the imprudence, in managing the affairs of the country. Clearly, you can't spend what you don't have. Clearly, you can't borrow your way out of an economic situation. And if you look at what's happening with the IMF negotiations, we are not out of the woods. I mean, we are still in dire straits. The economy is still, would not, the economy would not improve, at least in the next few months to a year or two, and we have said it time and again, Benjamin, that the government would have to, show some prudence, in the way they manage the economy. That includes reducing the size of government. Clearly, the president has been very intransigent, about taking necessary steps, about taking necessary measures, to heed to the call of Ghanaians. And it becomes very difficult to ask people to pay their taxes, because in a time like this, when the IMF is going to be giving us, a little over 3 billion, which would not even offset, the whole, our debt, foreign debt is over 5 billion USD. If you're getting 3 billion out of that, you would still have to, raise the rest of the revenue from somewhere. And ordinarily, this would have had to happen through, encouraging more and more Ghanaians to pay their taxes and to do the right thing. But how do you encourage people to pay their taxes when the government is simply wasting the people's taxes? It becomes extremely difficult to go on that, tangent of encouraging Ghanaians to be patriotic and more Ghanaian. The government would have to lead the way. They would have to show us some serious examples of meaning well, of doing the right thing, of cutting down costs, of eliminating profligacy. Then we can go back to the Ghanaian public, which is overburdened with taxes. You were talking a while ago about how young people up and down the country feel a sense of hopelessness. And that is a reality. I've been in my constituency in Kumbungu for the last 3 months. It's unimaginable, what people are going through up and down the country.
Well, interesting thoughts shared. Some have also suggested that, you talk about taking over the reins of power very quickly on this one because we have to make tracks. But some have also suggested that your party has not lived up to expectation. In Parliament, for example, you seem to be losing everything. And that you are not viable, that regardless of what you're saying in 2024, you may not be able to scale the hurdle. But I also want to find out an interesting point. You talk about the biases of the electoral commissioners, so to speak, or the chairperson and whichever other people you may be referencing. I don't know whether you're talking about Dr. Apiahene and Hajia Tijani. But I've heard some members of your party say, for example, that should the NDC, you get back into power, you would, get Jean Mensah out because she has flouted the same laws, regulations that Charlotte Osei flouted, whether it is procurement or whatever. Do you think that is the way to go? Do you think it's a solution, viable solution? Quickly on that.
Well, we would have to build, trust in our institutions. And clearly, Jane Mensah's continued stay in office has become very untenable, judging by her own conduct in office, judging by
which conduct specifically?
Breaches in procurement, judging by her own public pronouncements, which seem to insinuate some biases towards the NDC, and for that matter, it would be something that we would have to look at critically when we win the 2024 elections. But fundamentally, Benjamin, the NDC today in our country is the most credible party, to take us out of the woods. We've got, President Mahama, even though the primaries is not in the bag yet, but it's expected that it would be a walkover, who's got enormous experience about governance, who's seen it all and done it all, who comes to the table with a certain level of credibility, with a certain level of patriotism as well. You would remember the position, very painful ones he took whilst in government about, making fluffy promises just because of political power. So this is somebody who loves the country, who understands, the difficulties and challenges that we're facing. And I would hope and pray that Ghanaians would repose their confidence in the NDC, because we are the party of the majority, we are the party of the people, we are the party that is interested in strengthening institutions of state. As we speak today, many of our state institutions have become overly partisan. As we speak today, every now and then you see senior people in uniform, Benjamin. You would remember Nanka Bruce as a typical example, who was harassed and beaten up by party apparatchiks. You saw how court processes were disrupted by, hoodlums in the MPP. This had never happened in the history of our country, where, thugs go into a courtroom, disrupt the court process. So that's how deeply the MPP has gone. That's how far they've gone to, dissipate the confidence that we have in public institutions.
Right.
And then this is to the table to restore that, not just to strengthen public institutions, but more importantly, to resuscitate our economy, which is in the dying embers. And clearly, Dr. Baumia and Nanado and, incompetent Ken Oforiatta have showed little, competence, about managing the economy successfully.
Right. Let's get into some other stories quickly and then say goodbye to the Daily Graphic newspaper. Take stress management seriously. Clinical psychologists to employers, and I would say this, employees as well. If you're being stressed too much, and if you feel the kitchen is too hot, you know what to do. Take care of yourself. Because if you fall dead today, you'll be replaced. And that is the reality. Now, a clinical psychologist at the Eastern Regional Hospital, Akusia Sewabunsu, has urged employers to take stress management seriously to ensure the well-being of employees. Now, equally, she called for serious attention to be given to the mental health needs of young people, especially students. According to her, it was important for human resource officials in organizations to offer opportunities for talks with employees that guaranteed their privacy and confidentiality, and also inquired about their psychosocial stresses for prompt interventions when needed. Ms. Bunsu, who is also the health coordinator of the hospital, made the call at the inauguration of an 11-member executive body of the Human Resource Alumni Association of the All Nations University in Koforidua. She also goes on to talk about particularly vulnerable groups. Then church leaders, Inspire Nation, and 3 Christian leaders and church founders have encouraged Christians and the nation at large to be inspired by the reason for Easter and strive to overcome their challenges in life. I'm talking about Reverend Sam Kranche-Ankra, Royal House Chapel International leader, head Reverend Dr. Mensa Otabil of the International Central Gospel Church, and Bishop Charles Ajanasare of the Perez Chapel, the Perez Dome, as we call it. Those are the stories I'm wrapping with. Any quick reflections before we move on?
Well, I mean, both calls are in the right direction. In a time like now, we would have to emulate the lifestyle of Christ and all the prophets. In a time like now, we would have to take solace. As much as we strive to work hard to achieve the things we set for ourselves as a country and as individuals, the church would have to provide some comfort. The mosques would have to provide, some comfort and guidance, to people who are going through unimaginable difficulties, and that dovetails into the call for us to take stress management seriously.
Right.
If you were to conduct some research, you would find out that today a lot of couples are having challenges simply because the wives go into the market and prices of commodities change repeatedly, and it's the breadwinners are finding it difficult.
I'm seeing a lot more young people nowadays walking and mumbling to themselves. Just talking, mumbling to themselves. They are not speaking to anybody. They are mumbling to themselves. And that's not a good sign.
It's a serious crisis, and it's one that we have to take seriously because a healthy nation is a productive nation. If we would want to be very productive at our private and public, places of work, we would have to be healthy. And that includes our mental health, and we'd also have to demystify or change the way we think about, mental health. There's a lot of stigma. If you were to see a psychiatrist today, I'm sure there will be people who would be murmuring and say that, hey, Charlie, Benjamin the go mad. We saw him at Asylum Down or something like that. Seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist does not necessarily mean that one is mad, but it is also part of keeping a very balanced lifestyle. That every now and then, when you go through difficulties, whether it's losing your job, whether it's going through unemployment, whether it's going through divorce, every now and then it's key that we seek some mental health. But of course, the question is, when people are struggling to even find something to put on the table, how realistic is calls for them to go to the psychiatric hospitals for checkups?
Right.
But these are things that we can encourage, and probably those in that area of health may want to volunteer, in the churches every now and then. They may want to do, some outreach programs in the churches, in the mosques and synagogues, and even schools and places of work, just so that they can educate people, the public, on how to seriously keep a very balanced mental health.
Let's take a look at some of the messages. I asked people to send in messages about the Brian Achampong incident. A number of people have. I can't take all of them, but at least let me be fair and read out some of them. The first one that came through was from Azure Dramani, who says, he was inciting the youth towards the upcoming 2024 election. That's how you feel. There's also Amidu Katada, who says, I don't blame him. I blame some members of the minority for approving him as minister after what we witnessed in Ayawaso West Wogon. Okay, so it's the same comment. This one says, good morning, dear host. I am Ralph from Buokrum Estate, Kumasi. I don't see anything wrong with Brian Achampong's comments. He was only inspiring the grassroots. That's what Raphael says. This one from Seidu Ziblim says, so you actually say you are Bigang from Sagnarigu. The minister should know he is not God. Okay, so the rest of it I will not take. Then there is Bukari Isaka Mbugri, who says, this comment is rather unfortunate that a cabinet minister can make in a democratic dispensation like Ghana. However, let us not forget that it was during his tenure as a minister of state in charge of national security that there was the brutalization of NDC members and the constituents at Ayawaso West Wogon by election. So he meant what he said. All right, so those are some comments that have come through on the back of this conversation. Let's wrap on an economic note, and then we'll also take the reactions to some of, in fact, that outburst by some members of the MPP. That's how we'll wrap. So let's do that. If you look at the Daily Statesman and the New Crusading Guide, they say NPP committed to free and fair elections will not, however, tolerate violence. That is Richard Ahiagba, mouthpiece of the NPP, saying that on the back of what Brian Achampong said. Then there's also the Daily Statesman, no way for violence in 2024. NPP assures Ghana's democracy will be safeguarded, and that is attributed to the party's General Secretary, Justin Frimpong Kodia. So you can share your thoughts with me on that. And then, of course, there's also this one, ABC News, stop your needless attacks on Brian Achampong, MPP, to the NDC. Attacks? But I ask myself, Ghana, if let's say someone from some other party, not in power, had said this, would it have been okay? Would those in power have reacted the same way? Food for thought. Now, let's also do these economics-related stories, and then you'll have just about a minute and a half to respond to them. Graphic business, help Ghana shoulder debt burden, IMF pleads. And then there is, when you go to the Economy Times, Bank of Ghana locks up 3 billion Ghana cedis from banking sector. Let me just quickly explain. The Bank of Ghana's decision to tighten the cash reserve of the 23 universal banks in the country is expected to mop up excess liquidity of 3 billion Ghana cedis, Economy Times has learned. The Bank of Ghana has reset the cash reserve ratio on domestic currency deposits for banks from 12% to 14%, effective 13th April 2023. Additionally, the central bank plans to step up liquidity management operations to address excess liquidity conditions in the market. And of course, that will have an impact on the banks and the way they operate. Quick thoughts on these, and we can call it a conversation. Ras.
Thanks, Benji. Well, in respect of the economy, clearly, the government and the managers of the economy have been exceedingly clueless, about handling, the affairs of the economy. In a time like now when we have a food crisis, when, people are going through hardships, you don't impose further burden on them. That is not a way to take us out of the woods. There's still a lot of loopholes, in the tax bracket, and you would expect that these would be tightened up and not, have additional taxes imposed on an already overburdened Ghanaian public. So I'm hoping that they will take advice, but of course, they are notorious for not heeding the calls of Ghanaians. The only political party that has the magic wand, to get us out of this, sinkhole is the National Democratic Congress, and I would encourage Ghanaians, to repose confidence in the NDC, and that when we do come 2025, we would do the right thing. And it requires for all of us, to come out in our numbers and show our outrage at how, the MPP has managed the affairs of the economy over the last, 8 years or so.
Right.
Well, clearly, Brian is reckless. Clearly, that should not be coming from, a minister. Clearly, he should not have been appointed in the first place. Clearly, Parliament should not have. And I was taken aback by, the number of votes that he got, by the approval, some of which had, come from, our own benches in Parliament. And that gives us cause to worry, that we would have NDC members who would actually, in spite of Brian Achampong's checkered history of not being a very good public officer, would go ahead to approve of his nomination. Most unfortunate, but I'm confident that the Atuforsen-led minority would put in place the necessary measures to ensure that this does not happen again.
Okay.
And the party should also make example, of rogue elements who would want to put their parochial interest above the national interest.
Ras Mubarak is former member of parliament for Kumbungu. Just a quick one. Give me a yes or no. Will you go for the Kumbungu seat again?
31 days to elections. I'm actually running. I'm number 4 on the ballot.
Okay.
We're confident we would win the primary.
All right. All the best with that, Ras Mubarak joining us for this conversation. I have a final comment that comes through Surazu, just to reflect all sides. Surazu says, Original Muta at Wale Wale. Let's flash back and listen to what the ex-president Mahama also once said. Is it the boot for boot comment? Anyway, those are the comments you shared with us this morning, and we're grateful. When I called for your comments, you actually sent them through. The news review brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and we're offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening to you, the masses. All you have to do, come to any of our centers. Here in Accra, we're located at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. In Kumasi, if that's where you find yourself, we can be located at Kronoma here behind the Angel Educational Complex, in Takrady Anaji Estate, in Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, and the Siama Enzima. You can also reach us on these numbers, 0244 867-068 or 0274-234-321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Now in sports, Arsenal failed to get past Liverpool. They ended with a draw. There's a lot that we can talk about on the local scene and the international scene as well. In sports, up next.
Good morning. Let's do AM Sports here with me, Muftau Nabila Abdullah. We start with the Black Queens, and they will be in action later today against Senegal. It is the second leg of their international friendly against the Senegalese. The first leg, which was at the Accra Sports Stadium, ended 3-0 in favor of Ghana's female senior national team. And the second leg will be happening later today at the same venue. Head coach of the team, Nora Hoftel, has been speaking about the importance of such friendly matches as she seeks to build a formidable team that can compete at the continental and global level.
Yes, of course. I mean, at the moment we're still in a process where we need to bring our squad together, bring the puzzle pieces together to a big collective. We are flying in international players. We have over 70 players abroad in the nationals. So for us, it's important to bring them in. It's a long travel for them, but I'm very happy that, like Asuma, those players are flying in. They bring us a lot of quality. But besides, we also work with the domestic squad. So it's also important they are very young in our league. You know, most of the players are under 20 years old. So we want to bring the young talents in. Some we brought on the pitch are 16, 17 years old, the striker we brought in. So at the moment it's finding a bit the right structure players, but then adding also some young talents. All in all, yes.
Former Vice President of the Ghana Football Association, George Friye, has urged the leadership of the football governing body, led by Kurt Okerko, to make a case before government on the need to sponsor Ghana Premier League. According to him, he does not understand why there's always money when it comes to the Black Stars, but the GFA finds it very difficult in securing sponsorship for the domestic competition. He was speaking to my colleague, Nathaniel Atto.
I have a different approach.
Okay, tell me about it.
To securing sponsorship for a product like the Premier League.
Okay.
And I'll explain. You see, I find it difficult to understand that when the Black Stars are playing, we can get all the resources from government to fund it. But when the teams like House of Folk Kotoko are participating in club competitions in Africa, we can't fund the same. I find it difficult to understand. I think that the FA need to sit down with the sports ministry and make a case.
For that matter, government?
Yes. To make a case that yes, our number one product, apart from the Black Stars, and in terms of football in Ghana, I'm talking of the Premier League, we need the government help for some state agencies to support the Premier League. Elsewhere, it's done. Well, if you have a good rapport and you are able to explain, you are able to put the numbers on the table to explain to government that, no, Mr. President, can you speak to Ghana Gas, GMPC, Vodafone, to come to our aid? I think that if you make a genuine case and the President can understand that, yes, our number one league in Ghana needs sponsorship and the state must find a way to sponsor. Why not? I will explain why you need to fund Premier Division in Ghana through a collaboration with the Ministry of Youth and Sport. That if you look at this country, take out politics. There's only one product that unites the country, which is football. Irrespective of our House of Folk or our Asante Kotoko or our Olympics, on every Sunday, a sporting activity engage the attention of the citizenry. And this is good for social development of our country. Every country, every government that does not pay heed to the youth, the upbringing of the youth, you are in serious trouble. You understand what I'm saying? So for me, I think that the FA need to make a case before government. Make a case before government. Why you need government to support in securing sponsorship for the league. And I don't think this is far from where other countries have been able to do it and they've succeeded. I can mention a lot of countries where, even here in Nigeria here, state governments take over the running of leagues in their various jurisdictions. State governments. So I'm saying that in Ghana, if we are able to put the numbers and tell the president that, Mr. President, in every week, if we are able to get a sponsorship to take care, these are the number of people that football take care of. The number of people. Because remember, the clubs, when there's a football activity at Accra Sports Stadium,
there's a ripple effect.
Yes. The byproduct.
Sure.
Everybody, including yourself, you're good. So we need to make a case. We need to make a case and let government understand that, Mr. President, we need your support in order to secure a sponsorship for our Premier League.
From the Ghana Premier League, we go to Europe, and tonight, UEFA Champions League football returns. Manchester City versus Bayern Munich. We hear from the managers of the two teams. First, from Pep Guardiola, who is seeking to get the advantage of booking a ticket to the semi-final of the competition. He's playing against an old nemesis in Thomas Tuchel, who denied him an opportunity of winning his first Champions League title about 2 seasons ago. We'll have live commentary of that fixture on Joy 99.7 later tonight. It's the UEFA Champions League, the big night when it comes to European football. On this note, we'll wrap up AM Sports here with me, Muftau Nabila Abda. You can head on to myjoyonline.com and read some more sports stories. We appreciate your company this morning.
The National Youth Organizer of the NDC was the first to take on the Agric Minister for his comment. On a Facebook Live video, Mr. Yamin said the only reason Brian Achampon is getting away with his comment is because the leader of the NPP, as well as the president of the country, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has set a bad example.
This country will need to be saved, and it will be saved with equal measure. It may person is sending this signal. Look, we as NDC, me as a national organizer, will not be leading the NDC into the next election only for Brian Achampon and the MPP to just make useless statements like he has made. And this is not the first time. The first person who made that statement, unfortunately, is coming from the President of the Republic. And I wonder why we didn't hear people with conscience speak against the President's statement. You see, that is the hypocrisy you find in this country. That you have men of God, you have civil society, you have whatever, that will not see wisdom in criticizing the president when he makes statements be like that. And you see, the military training that we have is talking about leadership by example. So when the leader is making such statements, unfounded, uncultured statements, then Korano will do same, because it's the leader that is telling them what to do.
The NDC has since issued a statement asking the IGP to arrest the minister for his alleged treasonable comment. Speaking on JoyNews, Deputy General Secretary Mustafa Gbande said the NDC will not entertain any form of intimidation from the MPP.
What officials of government have started doing is just an indication of failure. And they have realized that the only alternative on to power is to breed violence as they have done in the past. But I can assure them that we live in a country that has been very peaceful, a country where there are many people who have lived to see this country develop to this extent. We will not allow hooligans.
Featuring on the probe Sunday, April 9, with Emefa Apawu, MP for Ebuakwa South, Samuel Atachia, said his colleagues' comments have been taken out of context. He wants the public to ignore.
It's been taken out of context. I was on the stage, actually. There was nothing fiery about it. It was just in context that like you having a good fight, I'll beat you to pulp. If you said that, doesn't mean that you're going to use violence or anything. It's a political language. So I was a bit surprised that people are giving it some violence undertones and all that. He never, exhibited anything which was of violence in character. So I was surprised. He was surprised. But I was there listening to what he said. We will not let you come to power. What does it mean?
That they will never hand over to power.
Of course. That means we'll break the 8.
But founding member of the NPP, Dr. Yaho Tamaklo, will not consider the comment lightly. According to him, he cannot sit down unconcerned in the face of such, quote, destructive political statement by some recalcitrant element in the political class. Without doubt, the statement by Brian Achampon can lead this nation into destruction beyond the extent the Akufo-Addo government has caused, unquote. He noted in a statement he issued. Security analyst Dr. Ishmael Norman has called on the IGP to invite Mr. Brian Achampon for further questioning. According to him, the comment may have security implications regardless of the intent of the speaker. He spoke on Joy FM's Super Morning Show with Mamavi Owusu-Abuaji.
There is a thin line between energizing the political base and weaponizing them. If this kind of talk continues, then Mr. Achampon himself will be considered to be an unethical political leader, because a leader would adhere to the rule of law and comply with what they say. So both of them cannot afford to alienate us, the population or the voters. So for the meantime, I think it's just posturing. However, the security agencies must be super alert.
Featuring on the same show, Executive Director of the Institute for Democratic Governance, Dr. Emmanuel Akwete, called on the President to intervene.
I think the person to speak is the President on this matter, and his ability to dismiss it as not his policy is extremely important, because he took action against Brian Achampon. The committee report, you remember the short commission report on what happened and how they were mobilized and so on.
Now that, as you may have guessed, as you've seen us going down that alley, is what we're going to be addressing. Brian Achampon, his recent outburst, as some would paint it. Attention has been drawn to what happened in Ayawaso West Wuogon many years back. Some say that was just the tip of the iceberg, and that now we're seeing similar scenes being, proffered for the future. But others have said this is nothing more than political talk. It is mere rhetoric. It is just on the back of some utterances from the other side, the minority NDC, to which he was also responding, saying, we're not going to allow you to have your way in 2024. But that sort of confidence in saying this will happen or this will not happen. It's said in our local parlance, if a blind man says he will stone you, then his foot just might be on a stone. What is the picture? Let's introduce our guests joining the conversation this morning. And we have Dr. Kwame Asasante. He is a political scientist and he is head of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. Doc, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation. You would have to unmute, Doc. We can't hear you.
Yes, I have done so. Good morning, Ben.
And good morning to Mr. Ahiagba.
Mr. Richard Ahiagba, a very good morning to you. All right, Richard Ahiagba has not unmuted. We'll try to get him. He is Director of Communications for the new Patriotic Party, and he's been saying a few things on the back of those statements by Brian Achampong. I'll get him to come and substantiate some of what he said and why his positioning is what it is. But let me start with you, Dr. Asa Asante. At the bottom of all of this, when you heard what Brian Achampong said, regardless of what the NPP has said, what the NDC has said, what the civil societies have said, even before all of that, what was your candid reaction? What did this mean for you as someone who follows the political space, who knows our checkered political history and how far we've come? What was your reaction?
Yeah, Ben, my reaction was very simple, that it was a veiled political threat. I mean, nothing.
What did you call
that?
A veiled political threat.
Political threat. Yes.
Right.
Why am I saying that? I want to look at this from at least about 2-3 perspectives. All right. It is part of the propaganda techniques that politicians rely on when they are engaging, campaign and elections and the rest of them. All right. And this one, if you look at from propaganda perspective, there are a number of techniques that political actors employ in elections or in campaign. And one of it is what we call the appeal to fear technique. All right. They rely on, this logical and idea to put fear into people, let you behave in a certain manner that the person who sends the message is able to arouse fear, create panic within you, and for you to do his bidding. All right. And that's it. That's one aspect. Another aspect is that when you look at it from the point of view of power, we are saying that power is the ability to influence the course of people's action. So there are two. One characteristic of power is what the influence dimension, that the subject, that is the doer of the action, causes the victim, who is the recipient of the message, to behave in a certain manner. That, if you look at this statement from that perspective, it tells you that, yes, you want to influence the voter in a certain way, but that one, it doesn't carry any vote, any threat. The where he comes out with something that, well, we use all means to maintain power and the rest of them. We can look at it from what we call the threat of sanction, use of power, that whoever is issuing that instruction or making that statement is saying that, yes, if you don't do A, I will also do this. But that is not what he said. He said we use all means. So I call it veiled threat, because if it's not veiled, veiled means that you don't want people to know the real threat that you are issuing. You are hiding something. But if you mean business, come out and tell us that NPP will not hand over power when they lose election. Then the statement is made. But that is not what he said. So if you look at all this thing, my understanding is that, look, it tells you that, one, once you issue statements like this, it tells me that, one, you don't have any message for the electorate, and that you want to rely on propaganda, the fear factor, appeal to fear, to, as it were, convince voters or put the fear of God into them to be able to vote in a certain direction, or create even panic that they don't even go out to vote and the rest of them. But you and I know that this will not happen, because this country has gone through a lot of things, and this cannot be a threat that will prevent people from not going to vote. They'll vote anyway. They vote based on their feeling, based on what they see, what they experience. So this cannot be something that will throw them away. After all, we have seen a statement from Rawlings in 2000, even before 2000 a lot, but 2000 that, he is not going to hand over power and the rest of them, and then who is going to inherit the reins of government and the rest of them. The 2000, the forces of democracy whip him to line. When they lost, Professor Mills was quick to jump into the air and say that, look, I have conceded defeat and that let's move on. That's a mark of a distinguished politician. And so that's it. If you also want to look at it from the point of view of policy, all right, that what government decides to do or not to do, can you say that this is the policy of government? If you press government hard on this matter, government will chicken out. So this is not the policy of government. So you heard Professor Akwete saying that it's the government, the president who has to speak on that. He's telling you that public policies start from what? The executive, the head of state. So is that the policy of the government? Can the government say yes or no? All right. When you press government, government will tell you that this is not a policy of government. The best it can be is just an ordinary statement from ordinary man who cannot do anything. But apart from this, it also tells me that, look, maybe he's having some fears that his party is losing the battle ahead. And that is why he's acting the way he's acting. Because if you go to the electorate, all right, you don't need to threaten them. All that you need is to be able to bring your debate to them. You'll be able to convince them with powerful debate and arguments so that at the end of the day, they will consider what you have put forward and then give you a hearing by voting for you. But if you send message of threats, though veiled, it will not give you the vote that you want. Let us remember that when people speak, they've spoken, and nobody can change shortchange their position. That people decide that let's look at it from constituency to constituency. If you vote at constituency A and then presidential, people they've counted, they voted against your party. And then you go to another constituency, they voted against your party. How can you change people's, will? You can change. You can change it. All right. So I see it as nothing. But of course, the political actors have taken political note of this. But for me, it tells me that it is coming from somebody who is desperately looking for power, or who is desperately want to maintain power, or want the electorate to renew their mandate by hook or by crook. But that doesn't lie. That doesn't lie in his mouth. It lies perfectly in the mouth of the voters. They would decide who to give their vote to, all right, based on what they see, what they feel, and what they know. Let us also remember that aside all these things, there are a lot of things that determine voter choices, and it's not threat. Threat is not one of them. One is what? The economy. How well is the economy? If Mr. Champong has anything to offer his party, all right, he needs to what? Be able to help his party to move this country out of this economic doldrums. And it's not this type of statement that will do anything for him. The economy is the most important factor to every voter in this country, irrespective of party ideology, tradition, and whatnot. Two is infrastructure development. The Constitution says that everybody is entitled to infrastructure development in his or her constituency. All right. So is that what they are doing? And the only thing he can do to support his party is to support the cause of building infrastructure so as to what? Endear himself to the heart of many in this country. The third one is what? Issue of corruption. All right. Your ability to fight corruption head on gives you the gravitas, gives you the courage to be able to what? Convince voters that this is one of your problems and that I'm able to do for you and the rest of them. So if you want to abandon this and then go for threats, go for statements that doesn't, sit well with what political parties, voters, and the rest of them, then you are shooting yourself in the foot. Apart from that, health issues, employment issues, and a host of them, about 14. These are the things that influence voter choices, not threat. We have gone beyond that, and that is what empty. There is nothing that will influence voter choice. People will vote on that day, rain or shine. People will walk in, go and cast their vote, and they will vote based on the things that I have said.
I will come to you on certain points you've made, but let me bring in Richard Ahiagba, who is also with us for a conversation. I hope I can hear him now. Mr. Ahiagba, a very good morning to you. All right, so we have a bit of a challenge with his connection. We'll call you, Mr. Ahiagba, on the phone lines to see whether that will work out better. Zoom would have been preferable. So let me come back to you, Dr. Asah-Asante. Now, there are some, and I, as a student of politics, have felt, was this Brian Achampong? Yes, he's been a ministerial, in that ministerial capacity before, but now, as a fresh appointee or nominee, if you like, who is at post as a cabinet minister, was he just trying to do something to show that me too are they, and I am representing the party, I am doing something? That's the first point. Now, when you say by hook or crook, part of the message I got from what he said, Emma Soul and this and that, was that whatever has to be done will be done. And if whatever has to be done, the means could be fair or foul. By hook or crook, which you used as an expression, Doc, means whatever is necessary, fair or foul. Now, the third point I'll make before I seek your reaction. You say it was a veiled political threat. Veiled political threat.
Yes.
Who knows what we'll see when we unveil it. But what is propaganda and what is real? That fine line, how do we define? How do we determine what is just innocuous, harmless, and what could result in an outbreak of violence? And as I say this, Rwanda comes to mind, and let no one get me wrong, but the sort of tenor, the sort of discussions, the sort of rhetoric, part of which stoked what happened there. I don't know. What is your take?
Yes, your observations are right, and they are firmly ingrained in the literature, all right? But what we're saying, the case on hand, all right, tells us that what the gentleman is saying, one, is that the policy of government. If it is a policy, let the government come out. Then we know that, yes, this is the policy. But the government would have been, no government would accept this as a policy. Because, look, it flies in the face of every rule of law. All right, every law, it flies in the face of that. Two, if you are saying this, and that's your policy, and you are going to IMF for, financial bailout, let us remember that one of the conditions IMF and the World Bank they gave to third world countries who were coming for loan was to go and democratize. And that's one thing that hit Mr. Rawlings, who was, during the PNDC era, was not ready to hand over power to a constitutionally elected government. He said over his dead body. Those conditions whip him to lie. So I'm talking about democratic forces. Do you think the World IMF will going to sit down that you are saying that when you have lost election, they are going to allow you to stay in power? I mean, you have lost. You will go out in the next minute.
Are you suggesting, though, are you suggesting, I get your point. I know what pressure was put on the likes of Rawlings during his tenure because he didn't necessarily want to get into a democratic phase. In fact, let's call a spade a spade. He didn't want to. At the time, he did. Maybe in future he would have wanted to, but he didn't at that time. His hands were tied because of, yes, some of these Bretton Woods institutions and the rest. But are you stretching that to intimate that they have some control over a sovereign country, that if things don't go right? We saw what happened in the Ivory Coast when Gbagbo was president and Ouattara, had come in around 2010. There is that. But there are also examples in Nigeria where people have cried foul, among others. I mean, it's a fine line, isn't it?
It is, but let me tell you, you were talking about sovereignty. All states on paper are sovereign, but some are more sovereign than others, all right? Here we are talking about a confederation, a loose association of states, all right, or groups like this, all right? They have the economic wherewithal to dictate to states and tell them direction they follow, whether we like it or not. So your sovereignty doesn't come in at all. If you are sovereign, you should be able to cater for yourself and not rely on them for support. Once you go to them, they give you a condition. Why don't you say that, well, I'm a sovereign state, I'm not going to abide by that, and the rest of them? Look, you will do their bidding. They will not sit down for any democracy that they have nurtured, they have supported to go down. And that one, it will be somebody's a figment of his imagination. It won't happen. Two, the people of this country will not sit down for you to shortchange them when they have voted for party A, and you are saying that you want to change their destiny for party B. Who is going to allow that? And people will police the ballot. People will be part of the counting process. People will be part of coalition and everything. And so what are you going to do? When they are not even satisfied, the last bit, they go to the Supreme Court and seek redress, where audit will be done in some of these things.
Are you suggesting, Doc, that it is impossible to rig an election in Ghana? Are you suggesting that it is impossible for the powers that be to manipulate the process? Are you saying we have a foolproof system? Because not even the United States has that. And I mention them because while we'll cite the United Kingdom, Britain or England to be specific, as the mother of democracy in modern terms, though we would go back to the Greek polis for that, you would realize that even the United States, in the election that brought Trump into power, looking at the Electoral College vote, among others, there were disputes about the reality, but it was allowed to move on. There were claims throughout the tenure of Trump about manipulation by the Russians, so to speak. Are you saying we are beyond all of that with our systems?
No, I'm not. Far from it. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that the check system exists. Are we saying also that there are no check system that we have counted in constituency A and Mr. A has won for the presidential? You think you can change that and nobody will question that? You can try, but people will stand up and question that using the legal processes and all that. So I am saying that, yes, we are a human society. Yes, people can tamper with things here and there. But I tell you, when we want the truth will come out. And that the people themselves will not even, from the word go, allow you to what? When they mean to throw you out, they won't allow you to what? Have your day. No, they will police the system and make sure that we get to the fine end. And whoever emerges winner, he wins. That's it. And apart from all this, we are saying that, look, it is the message, all right, that influence voters. It's not any threat. We have seen threats. You remember 2004, people were saying this country would turn into Liberia. You recall?
Right.
We have said every time we go for election, there are a lot of threats people issue against certain groups of people, that they are going to be deported, that this country will be on fire and all that. Thank God we are still in. Simply because, look, it is easier said than done. You cannot, because whether security or whatever, they are all part of what? The political society. And they also care about their society. So you cannot influence them or cause them to do something that is they themselves against their survival. Nobody wants that. This is democracy. Take it or leave it. Has its problems, but it has served us so well. We are peaceful. We have become the beacon of hope for democratic enterprise in the sub-region and in Africa. And that you think interested parties will sit down for this thing to go down. Nobody should dare. Nobody should dare. The voters, they are the people who decide the direction of the country and nobody else.
Hold for me, Doc. Let me hopefully get Richard Ahiagba. Richard, can you hear me?
I can hear you quite clearly now, my brother.
Great. It's been quite a struggle getting connected to you this morning, but it's good that I can hear you loud and clear now. So let's start from the very start. The same question I put to Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. Barring, I don't know how you're going to be able to do this because you represent the MPP. You are their mouthpiece. But if you had heard this as a Ghanaian, putting aside whatever lenses or, rhetoric that you had heard out there. How do you feel about it, what Brian Achampon said recently?
Well, thank you very much, and a very good morning to Dr. Asante. Doc, I'll call you after this program. Essentially, I would analyze the issue if I were to listen to this and not an MPP member. I would have analyzed it and see where the issues are and where they come from, and then be able to then form a view of my own on the matter. And even now, as an MPP person and the Director of Communication, it is clear to me that the MPP will not do any, and the MPP will do nothing of the nature that is being insinuated to affect our democracy. The conversation that was had last time was clear, and it was in a nature of trying to clarify a position that others have taken and indicate to them to nip it in the bud, to desist from that line of approach to the elections in 2024, and that will only beget more violence if people are treading on that path. And also the idea that we'll win the election and therefore will not hand over to the NDC. I would have done the analysis and come to the conclusion that yes, given the cause, the effect is justified, and it's clear to me in my mind that the NPP will say that they would respond, or they have the men, and therefore the NDC should de-escalate, or they would win the election and not hand over to the NDC. So I think that the issues are clear in my mind. But the only point where you would be worried is if you are taking the conversation out of context, in which case you'll be worried until you are given the full fact or you are helped to situate the conversation in context. I think that's how I would have analyzed it if I were not MPP. But even now that as I'm an MPP person, it's clear in my mind that the MPP means no harm. The MPP is a free and fair player of in our democracy. We have done that since 1992 when we were cheated. We play by the rules. And up until now, our contributions and proposals have strengthened our electoral processes. So there is no way in anybody's world to imagine that MPP, the party that has done so much to strengthen our electoral regime and make sure that this democracy continues, will be the one to adversely affect it in 2024. It is not us. We're responding to a certain conversation that we find problematic, and the person who started that, the cause of this conversation, is who needs advice.
The person who started this conversation is the one who needs advice? Is that what you said?
That's my position, yes, please.
I see. You talk about the context of what Brian Achampon said. What for you is that context? Please make it clear for us.
And so there's an ongoing conversation. I think that I start from, and then I'm looking at the conversation to say we have the men, and if you have other questions, I'll answer from that discussion. Yes, so the first day or the night or the morning when Chairman Asedu Nketia took the podium after having won the election, he promised that they are on a certain path to win Ghana's second independence. I find that very offensive, because Ghana's independence is intact. For anybody to suggest that they are on a crusade to win a second independence for Ghana, for me, is offensive, especially when their tradition has nothing to do with the first independence of Ghana to suggest that they're on a path to win a second one. So that was a very brash talk, saying that they will sacrifice everything. You know, and I've seen version of the video of the night that says they will sacrifice everything, including lives. And I don't know who they are contending with, on whose behalf, or who's engaging them in a fight so much that they need to sacrifice life to win anything. Democracy doesn't require that, but that's the conversation they're having. And so that's one. And then the flag bearer, His Excellency, the former president, also on the campaign talk, since his launched his campaign, they've been talking about we'll march them boot to boot, boot for boot, do or die. And I'm wondering what exactly necessitates that conversation, or is anybody saying anything to them about violence, for which reason they are preparing and offering proactively that they're going to do boot for boot or do or die. And so that creates a certain atmosphere. And we And yesterday, on Saturday, the response was very clear to say that you've been saying all these things, and all these things that you are saying, it's not as if we don't have what it takes to also speak like that. So the context is that if, conditional statement, if you are going to use patapa, if you are going to use ehunehuna, if you are going to use nkwasiasem in 2024, we will show you that we have the men. In other words,
I don't think the N word you just used, the Nkwa something, is appropriate for radio or TV.
It's our language.
But
No, because that was what was spoken. So I'm literally just quoting for you. I don't know how to change it for you in speech and translating from the local language. Pardon me if that is in bad taste. But literally, that was the conversation that was had. So to be able to paint a graphic picture for you, the speech suggesting that if conditionally, if this is what you are bringing, didn't even say that we would give you or would attack you or would do anything, saying that we'll just show you that we have the men, is a response to a conversation. In that context must be clear. So if it's a response to a conversation, then we should find out from the originator of that conversation to say that, are you committed to the do or die you are promising? Because we just had a group respond to that conversation. So that if to cure this thing, you go to the source to say that please de-escalate. Please go back and rescind what you are saying so that there will be no response necessary. And in fact, recently, there was an opportunity offered for that conversation of do or die to be rolled back. But a former president refused to do so. So if he refuses to de-escalate, naturally, for self-preservation purposes, you elicit a certain response. So it is almost involuntary on us for self-preservation purposes to serve notice to the NDC that your talk, we have taken notice. The way you are speaking, assuming that there is some violence coming, which we don't know anything about, but if you keep talking like that, we don't know what you have seen. In our local parlance, they say if a blind man wants to, hit you with a stone, it's either he's holding the stone in his hand or his foot is on the stone. Now, this party is talking violence all along. Shouldn't it be necessary for us to let them know that please de-escalate, stop it? Because we too
and so without claiming that is true, even if it were the case, and the remedy is to meet violence, purported violent talk with violent talk, right? I'm sure you've heard of two wrongs not making a right before.
Certainly, I agree with you. But what we said last time was not a violent response, is just to let you know that we've been hearing you talk this violence. But just know that we can defend ourselves. It is not offering violence. It is saying that we too are capable, of defending ourselves if what you are offering, you actually make good on it.
Right.
So now you see. So
let's make tracks, Mr. Akakpo. I get the point you're making. I would like to make this. In the news review, I asked for your comments. I'm asking for same again. I see a number of you contributing on social media with interesting and varying thoughts. I would like a lot of you Ghanaians watching us this morning to get interactive. Let's speak up. Let's know what does this bode for us? And the people of Abetifi, which is the constituency that is represented by Brian Achampong. For those of you there, I would like to hear from some of you. Maybe when we activate the phone lines, who knows? We just might activate the phone lines in the course of this conversation or later, or you could send us a message on social media. I'd love to hear from you. How do you feel about the statement made by your member of parliament, and is it reflective of what you are thinking? But back to you, Mr. Akakpo. You spoke recently on the back of this, and you made mention of the MPP's commitment to free and fair elections, but that you would, however, not tolerate violence. And you made mention of the NDC matching the MPP boot for boot in the 2024 elections as per the statements that had been made, attributed to or in fact uttered by former President Mahama, and that the NDC would not joke in 2024. Did you find those comments inflammatory?
It was scary. If inflammatory is less threatening, I'm saying that they were scary to hear that. Because look, as a consummate believer in democracy, I think that democracy, per all standards, is supposed to engender peace, right? And so democracy, we shouldn't have in any part of it having the kinds of conversation the NDC proactively is offering, to say boot for boot against who? That they will sacrifice lives or sacrifice their lives. For what reason? Just to vote?
I have heard members of the MPP in the past say that whatever it took, even to the point of shedding their very lives. It's not a new rhetoric, is it? I've heard stalwarts in your party say.
Well, but wait for it. Wait for it in the NDC. Now, of course, if I am from MPP and I'm threatening violence and you hear me, you just know that I'm not born out of violence.
I see. So there's a distinction now.
No, yeah, because that distinction is necessary because the former president forced us all to make that distinction because he says that they have revolutionary roots. So that you have two distinct people. One who has a disposition, to orchestrate violence, and he's proud of that disposition, and one who doesn't. So the person from my background, who is not of a revolutionary route, when I'm talking violence and all that, you can just say that I'm just threatening for no reason.
Right.
But one who says so and emphasize to you that, yes, I have a revolutionary route. When that person is talking, you take him serious.
I see. Whether that is or isn't, rhetoric is rhetoric, and it must be taken seriously, just as I mentioned the Rwandan example. But I was premising what I said. No, hold on. I was premising what I said. So you say that you found those statements worrying, troubling. I'm just trying to, because I've forgotten the exact word you used.
Very scary. I use scary.
Scary. Did you find it inflammatory, insightful, scary when you heard Brian Achampong utter what he did recently? Did it scare you in any way, shape, form?
No, it didn't.
Why?
Because he is responding to a scary statement. To let a bully finally knows that, okay, well, the people you've been bullying in the park, in the school park, or in the backyard, suddenly have decided to straighten their backs up and let you know that they won't take it anymore. So it didn't scare me. In essence, it gave me an indication that, yes, the NDC would now begin to tone down and know that they can't continue bullying forever. So that, for me, was the context. And you see, the unfortunate thing is that the media conversation is putting a certain slant and emphasis on what Brian said and not on what the NDC said. The response is rather now the cause. But there's a cause to this conversation, and that cause is the former president. So let's begin to have that conversation in context to say that somebody said something. What he said, is it okay? And that the response here, is it justified?
Don't you find it interesting, Mr. Ahiat, don't you find it interesting that the comments of the former president didn't seem to have stoked conversation, stoked the ire, so to speak, of the people like the present comments of Brian Achampong have? Don't you find some disconnect there?
No, in fact, it actually just tells me that where the media is paying its attention.
Civil society organizations have jumped on this forcefully.
Yes.
Forcefully.
I see that.
You can say what you will about the media, but civil society organizations, a number of people, prominent people, one of the founding members of your party, Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, has come out to lambast your party, cut your party, so to speak, for some of these comments and all of that. He is not a member of the NDC, is he?
No, he's not. And so and so the media is supreme, right? The media is king. So if this morning you have brought the two issues on table and said that, look, we see what Brian is saying as a response, justifiably as a response to the threat that is proactively being offered. That threatens the future peace of the state. And I'm sure that my father, Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, will be listening and say that, so this is where this thing is coming from, right? So if you don't serve the two issues, there is certainly a cause to the matter. The response cannot become the problem. The response cannot become a problem when the cause exists. So let's deal with the cause. Now, the issue you are saying about the former president's comment didn't elicit the same level of concern. It did. He was given opportunity to say the things you are saying are too brash. Can you rescind those ones? Can you rescind the do or die thing? He said no. He was poking at the studio desk and said, no, he will not, because the election is critical. But nobody is fighting in advance. So they are creating a certain outlook. That outlook is political. That outlook is to create a sense of urgency.
Right.
To escalate a certain atmosphere. And if they don't de-escalate, they are going to walk us all into trouble.
Right.
So what the response that has come now, if we want to do our democracy a service, then we then have to hold a conversation and have the parties be held accountable. And to begin with this accounting process, you will have to find out where this thing began from. And it began from the end.
Just hold for me. Hold for me for the benefit.
Let me just land for you. If we're not putting the emphasis where it belongs, we'll be blaming the wrong people, creating the impression that what MPP said is the problem when the cause exists, and you'll be there and you have an infraction or some kind of problem happen, then we would have shot ourselves in the foot because we failed to focus on the cause of the problem. The NDC must be told plain and simple that de-escalate, stop talking violently, stop promising this future violence, because nobody is offering violence in 2024.
All right. Let's. I think your point is well made. Let's
to de-escalate.
I want us to just perform this simple exercise. I want us to watch briefly, and it's so short, what Brian Akakpo said exactly. And I'll come to both of you, gentlemen, Dr. Asante, Richard Ahiagba, for us to peel it layer by layer and maybe find whether it is as innocuous as we say, or whether there are gray areas we need to pay attention to. Ghana 4, let's watch this video. So interesting commentary. Two things. So first off, that will come and stand on any platform and hand over power to the opposition NDC. It will never happen. And then again, he says that whatever means must be employed to maintain the MPP in power will be employed. Based on what? You made the analogy about a blind man suggesting he would stone somebody. It would either be that he had a stone in his hand or he had his foot on a stone. Based on what can Brian Akakpo, Richard Ahiagba, make such categorical statements?
About doing whatever it takes to win 2024?
It was basically like saying by hook or crook, by means fair or foul, we shall win. Wasn't it?
Well, what he says is clearly what a political party should aspire to do, is to do whatever it takes to win political power legitimately in the democratic context. And if you look at our long history, this Fourth Republic, that suggests to you that it is appealing to Ghanaians, it is campaigning hard, it is ensuring that the electoral processes are firm, independent, so that every vote to be accounted for, and ultimately MPP will cross the line with 50+1 and win the elections. That's what Brian is referring to. That's what we believe in the MPP, and that's what we have done from the start of this Fourth Republic. So he wasn't saying anything that we don't believe in. And so I think that is as simple as that. It should be clear to anybody as daylight that we are going to do whatever it takes. And in fact, to contextualize it for you, you remember during COVID, the president in this what has become known affectionately as fellow Ghanaian addresses talked about how is it that we know how to bring our economy back, but not how to bring people back to life when they perish. Country. There hasn't been any point in time where a government had to give free water to people, free electricity to people. There hasn't been in the history of this country a situation where people were shut in their houses, the economy came to a screeching halt, that this economy was not working. But we came to that point, and government did whatever it took to be able to preserve our livelihoods and save lives. And that is the mindset we're approaching the elections with. And in context, again, when Brian was speaking, he did say the challenges the economy faced. Before that, talking about how is it that in 2017, 18, 19, when we came in, the economy was growing up until that glitch that happened in 2020, and then subsequently 2022 with the Russia-Ukraine war, all totally vanquishing all the gains that we've made and the momentum that we have built for economic growth. But now that we are reorganizing, historically, this debt restructure never happened in our history. Government is investing and taking all the tough decisions to ensure that as a country, we go back to the good place. And that is what he's talking about, that this government, this MPP party will support this government to take all the necessary legitimate decisions to ensure that we bring back this economy. And in bringing back the economy, do all to ensure that we win the 2020 election. Recently, you saw the story that we've been pushing, or that has come, of taking on a life of its own, that it is possible that the NPP can win 2024. That is the spirit. That is the mindset, that we believe that is possible. That we believe that it's possible to bring back this economy. And we believe that it's possible, if we bring back this economy, we can win 2024. That is the mindset. That is the leadership Brian was providing to tell us that yes, MPP, it is possible. Things may be hard today, but it is possible. Things may be difficult for Ghanaians, and they are complaining, but it is possible that we'll restore the economy. And he talked about how, at least by June, the IMF will come support us, and then we'll be able to build back to a good place.
He could have said all of that. He could have said all of that, including what boons we would get from the IMF, without saying some of the spillovers. He could have just said that we'll get the economy back on track and we would win. But of course, it's his choice versus what anyone else may think. But I wanted to bring in Doc. I'll just bring in 2 quick points. I want you to address this incisively for me. I'm curious if the people's vote, the ballot, is what is supreme. How can he suggest that we'll never hand over power to the NDC? Those were his words. We'll never. No, hold on. Let me make my point. If you have any interventions, then you can come through. So, suggesting that your party would never hand over power to the NDC, and that it would never happen. If the people's ballot is supreme, how can he say that? And secondly, we've been talking about former President Mahama here, some of his comments in the past. If former President Mahama had said what Brian Achampong said, would you be reacting the same way? 2 questions, quick one for you.
So before that, I'm just saying that next time we have a walk, it will be 2024. I'll invite you and have you on the platform, see how you say it differently.
I am not a politician,
the
fortunately.
That you have raised. Yeah, so just for the exercise of it, so I see how you will say it differently. The point that you raised about, NCDA, if you are a political party and you have won election or you are going into election, what will be your mindset? That we are going to lose, so we hand power over to our opponent? No, you won't do that. You're going to the election to win. And that's why every election is a 50-50 chance. Even you saw NDC in 2020, When they knew they had lost the election, they went to court. So that is a political party psychology for you, right? They lost the election. Now we know from Asedu Ketie's, Chairman Asedu Ketie's commentary that they know they lost the election. Even that, they subjected Ghanaians to a legal process that wasted our time, but they knew they lost the election, which simply tells you that the psychology of a political party or for any human being going into any context, your hope is to win. Otherwise, you are not alive. Otherwise, you're not a political party. Your objective is to win. So the psychology is that we will win in 2024, and we will do all it takes to win. So we're just not saying we'll win, but we'll do the work it takes to win. Simply, that's what Honorable Brian is saying. So if former President Mahama is saying it, yes, it is a political party. They want to win. So I won't be surprised. What I will do is that I will charge my own party people and say, look, we need to go out there and win this election. It is a battle for the votes of the people.
So in other words, just to contextualize, if former President Mahama had said this, you would have no problem with it. It would be okay.
He's been saying it.
Let's put this into a certain box. Forget what he has said. Forget what he will say. I'm saying if he had said this a few days ago, it would be okay. Just confirm that for me.
Say what exactly? That he will win the election?
Exactly what Brian Achampong said.
Yeah, that we will win the election. That's what he's saying. Otherwise, he will not be contested.
That it wouldn't ever happen that the MPP would win, and so they would not accept anything, that it had to be them. Would you accept that?
But you will not accept to lose. You remember in this country in 2016, you remember a comfortable lead after they have seen the
I think we should move on. The media often is the unfairly adduced whipping boy of both political sides when it suits you. That tag will not stick, though, I have to tell you fairly, because when President Mahama uttered those comments, I don't know whether you ever watched this platform or listened to our partner stations on radio. To suggest that we didn't talk about it or make all the noise, the furore about it, would be a bit, I don't want to use that word, but would be a bit politically incorrect. And unless you don't want to, you can go into the archives and find that, respectfully, Mr. Ahiagba. But the point to be made is that even if someone were known to be violent, if I know someone who is very temperamental, and I know that the least thing triggers this person, assuming it were the case, I wouldn't do certain things in a certain way because I knew how the person would react. So if you fight fire with fire, you know what happens. Everything burns. But let me bring in Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante for a quick point. Doc, are you still with us?
I am with you.
Having listened to everything that has been said, especially by the communications director of the New Patriotic Party, Is there any missing link? Is there something we are missing? I played the video again, and then I picked out some salient points, two of which I put to Richard Ahiagba. I, in fact, asked him that if former President Mahama or some other stalwart of the NDC had uttered those statements, would he readily agree with them? And he intimated that it would be okay. What is your take?
I have said from the word go that what the minister was saying was nothing but, a veiled threat. It's empty, because what really influenced voter choices is not threat. I mean, you can't threaten anybody to go and vote which direction. No, people vote based on what they see, what they feel, and they manifest themselves in economic messages, in messages that resonate with the people. They also manifest themselves in infrastructure development. The record there is what we...
Hello, Doc. Well, a bit of a technical glitch there, some connectivity issues. I'll just pause a bit, see whether we can get Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante back. He's a political scientist and head of the Center for European Studies. Doc, can you hear me now? Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante's connection is still problematic. We'll try to get him back because I wanted to run a number of things by him. But Richard, just as your connection was impacted at the start and I had to focus on Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, I think it's only fair that I come back to you now. When Brian Achampong said, quote, "We have the men," please clarify. We have the men to match violence with violence, or we have the men to do the job? I want that clarity. And on social media, listening to the commentary or watching the commentary of some people have said, is this what you present if you have the men, where we find ourselves economically speaking, looking at the inflationary rate, which is still astronomical, looking at the exchange rate, which is still very problematic. The last time I checked a few days ago, the pound was up to about 16 cedis, thereabouts, in terms of street value. Looking at the number of taxes that have been heaped onto the banking sector, the businesses in our country, the ordinary Ghanaian who may have taken a loan facility, looking at the myriad problems, health, education, shortage of vaccines, which we're resolving, among others. Some have questioned the "we have the men" mantra. What is your reaction to that? Can you clarify what he meant?
Thank you very much. I just want to say that I wasn't referring to multimedia necessarily when I said the media.
But we form part of the media, so you can't take us out. You said the media.
Well, yeah, so then that also lets you know that it's not all the media that is doing the work you're doing. So the point is that whatever you have done, there's always room to do more, right? So it is important that we aspire to the heights. So if there's a conversation that is two-dimensional and you're just focused on one dimension, it calls for that guidance to say that why are you fixated on the cause, why are you not fixated on the cause but on the effect? So it is a guidance issue that I'm saying. Even if you have done it, you can bring it forward and say, okay, well, now we have two issues now going together. This is where it began, this is where it's headed, so please, can you de-escalate? That is just the guidance I'm saying. It's by no means to question what you have done as if you're not doing anything. You see, the issue of we have the men, it is simply to just let you know that we will not offer proactively to be violent, but will resist any appearance of violence that would jeopardize our democracy. Quite simply, that's what it is. Now, in terms of what you're saying, to say that people say if we have the men, why are we in this economic situation? This issue we have gone over and over and over, except that somehow in Ghana, when we have conversation, we don't continue. We always go back and start from the beginning. This issue should be clear by now in this country, that yes, we are here because of COVID-19. Yes, we are here because of Russia-Ukraine war. This is something that the NDC has been talking about. It's infected the media with it. Now today, just when they had their press conference, they were saying, oh, Ivory Coast, they were saying this, they were saying that. Ivory Coast is with the IMF. Now, it is a global situation. Just today, I was here in Congo. They have an issue with dollars. Recently, we have, they can't even pay salary. This, we talked recently about Kenya. They are struggling, okay? So it is a global issue that is come to our door. Before that, we have the men. Yes, we have the men. And when we took over in 2017, this economy, we inherited it at 3.4, 3.7, variously looking at, depending on what series you are taking, at 3.4. In 2017, this economy grew by 8.2%. This economy grew again in 2018. We have the men. The men were doing the work, and the economy was growing up until COVID-19 came. So if you see that the economy grew 2017, 18, and 19, and you're making assumption moving forward, given the momentum of a 3 fiscal year growth, you're making any momentum, even if you have your eyes closed, and you can just touch the numbers, you will naturally, inevitably say that in 2020, this economy was going to grow again. But this economy didn't grow in 2020. Why? Because COVID happened. Because COVID happened. In fact, after COVID, we started picking up. In 2021, this economy...
Some would also tell you, especially as you make those analogies, in fact, throughout this period, I think I just missed the date, I think it must have been 2012 or 2014, we had probably the biggest growth in terms of our GDP that we've experienced in about 15 years.
2011.
Thereabouts. And hold on, others would also say, making the point that you were merely a beneficiary. The economy was already on a front foot, recovering when you took over. You remember the IMF deal and what results we were already getting. You remember the oil situation. So you came and inherited something. You benefited from it from 2017 moving onwards. Not necessarily that you did anything special. This has been corroborated by economists that we've spoken to from different academic institutions in Ghana. It's been corroborated by some civil society organizations. So when you make that point, I just had to situate it in that context as well. If we're going to cry foul about COVID and Ukraine and Russia, then we might put it into that context as well.
Okay, so that's fine. But you know, the 2011 GDP growth, 14% that you talk about, okay, that was on the back of, commercial oil production in 2010, 2014, 2011, then it went up. That's okay. But you know what happened after that? The GDP of our country decelerated, declined, all the way down to 3.4. It never grew. It never grew. So then you can see that there's a management impact there. The factors were just not left to themselves and they were working. If the factors were left to themselves and they're working, you will assume that the growth that we experienced in 2011 at 14, it will continue. But there was an intervention, there was a management in place that couldn't keep those factors going. So it's a management issue that you have attained a GDP performance of 14% and you watch that decelerate all the way consistently. Former President John Dramani Mahama, when he came to office in 2013, right, the GDP he inherited was 7.3%. He never grew the economy beyond that. It declined all the way, year in, year out, declined all the way. Okay, so that is not a question of inheriting anything.
It's interesting, isn't it? You wouldn't consider the circumstances then, but you would consider the circumstances now as some sort of excuse. Because to be fair, whether you are referring to Rawlings, Kufuor, Atta Mills, John Mahama or Nanado, you've all had your own plagues depending on what the situation has been. You remember the Kufuor gallons. There was a situation. Kufuor did amazing work in Ghana, but there were situations that, brought economic crises at a point. Atta Mills faced them, Mahama faced them, Doomsday and so many other things that happened. And so why in bringing to the fore what we're talking about, I find it problematic sometimes when we try to decontextualize. You will all have problems. So if you have the problem of COVID and the Russo-Ukrainian war, tell me, why should that be exceptional?
I am one person who any day, doesn't matter how the argument is going, I would want you to contextualize the argument. So I'm not sure what decontextualization you are talking about. So if we are going to contextualize the conversation, contextualize it in Mahama's time, let's have that conversation and see what was happening and if that justifies the output he gave Ghanaians. And then contextualize this conversation and see what is happening, see if the result we're getting is justified. Okay? But I'm telling you that you will agree that never in your life have you seen a situation where the global economy came to a shutdown, that this country was locked down. You've never seen that. I've never seen that. Okay? You have never seen a situation where in the developed economies, they are having to deal with unprecedented levels of inflation, which is cascading and affecting us. You have never seen a situation in this world where all of the economies will have to go to IMF. I think the number of countries going to at last check is in excess of probably about 30 or so countries going to the IMF at the same time.
That is definitely not all countries, is it?
But I'm saying that the total number of countries going to the IMF is unprecedented at the same time. So the point is that you are at a certain pivotal point in history that things have gone completely out of alignment. And this one, you don't need a newsmaker or the news teller to tell you that there's something happening in the world. You just feel it. You just know it. That here today in the United Kingdom, people are demonstrating for cost of living because inflation has eaten away their earnings. Inflation has taken away their purchasing power. So therefore, they're demonstrating. I was in the UK on the 18th, and we're having a program. People could not come to the program on the trains because on that day, the train workers were demonstrating. Because why? They want cost of living adjustment. Because why? Inflation has eaten away their earnings. So this is a catastrophic global event that needed a response. That response is being offered, right? And so here in Ghana, you don't have to dream it. You don't have to have anybody tell you that this is what is happening. The only thing is that we needed to support our government, but the politics of our country is taking the best of it. So the production this time from 2017, but for the men we have, you wouldn't have gotten the growth that you got sustainably 2017-18, especially when the economy you inherited was not on an upward swing. The economy was contracting. So to turn around a contracting economy and make it into a growing economy takes a certain doing. This is what I think we need to emphasize. NDC, when in 2009 they came, they inherited an economy that was on upward swing. So they had momentum behind them to push that economy forward. But when we came in, we had an economy that was decelerating, economy that was contracting. So if you are able to turn a contracted economy around in 1 year, if you want to be fair, if you want to have an objective conversation, it cannot be that the economy just turned around because of good omen. No, it turned around because people put minds to it. And that's how we got growth in 2017. That's how we got growth in 2018. That's how we got growth in 2019. And now the history is clear. The happenings is clear to you and myself that in 2020, something happened. And I was going to tell you that whatever happened in 2020, this government grouped and put policies in place in 2021, this economy went back to growth. And that growth in 2021, 5.4% GDP. And the last quarter of 2021, you have 6% growth, indicating to you that you are on a momentum. 2022, you are going to keep growing.
All right. So
the problems with it, February 28th, where Russia-Ukraine happened, put everything again out of alignment, and that's what we've been dealing with. And this government is committed. We're not making any excuses. We're committed, taking the tough decisions, and we believe that things will turn around again because we have the men to do it.
You have the men. It's just because we've exhausted our time, but maybe I should find time and sit with you and have some more of these discussions. There are other things and other comments. Unfortunately, I can't read all of them. I'll just read one at the tail end after Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante makes his final remarks. Doc, we've exhausted a bit of time.
How random are you going to choose that? Is it going to be very random, or is going to be some intentional picking of that one?
No, so there are a lot of comments, especially aimed at or directed at Richard Ahiagba, but we don't have the time for that. But there's one that is general. In fact, I could just read it now. It says, it's from Maud, who says, "We should love Ghana more than our political parties. Oh, this is not funny anymore. Please, we have nowhere to go if you destroy this beautiful country. And I think that is addressed to both sides. And that is why I said, because those that are addressed directly to Richard, it may mean there would have to be further deliberations. We don't have time for that. But I felt this one was very general to both our big political parties to take note of that. And that's why I said that would be the only comment I would read. Doc, your final comments, please.
Happening further, that one is nothing but propaganda, just to put, if you like, the fear of God in people to vote in a certain direction. But that will not happen. The legislature doesn't support that. People don't vote based on fear. They vote based on factors just as, messages that you churn out that resonate with people, all right? The economic messages, messages that relate to infrastructure development, the fight against corruption, issue of health, and the rest of them. Not only that, but people vote based on, or the parties win power based on your resources, your strategy, and then your manifesto. Any other consideration, consider it was secondary. It won't happen. Because if you were to use threats, all right, nobody would have stayed in power forever, all right? But threats do not influence voter choices at all. People have threatened this country time and again. It never worked. The people went to the polls, voted according to their conscience, what they see, what they feel. That is what is going to happen. And people are vigilant because vigilance is the price of liberty. People are going to make sure that nobody's will be shortchanged in that direction. So I believe that all these things is much ado about nothing. It's just empty noise, just to, heat up the political system. But that. So when
my apologies. Just give me a yes or no to this. When Mr. Akwete of IDEC says the president must speak on this matter, do you think it is important or not?
Talking about policy, I have already alluded to that. And that if you look at it from the point of view of policy, it's what government decides to do or not. Would government say that this is what they want to do? Government cannot come out and say this, and government cannot make it its plan. Never. Then it's not a government that we are talking about. All right, that is a democratic government. No, so it can only be somebody's statement is making. But I want to serve this message to the two parties and all the parties. Right. That nobody wins power without what? A strategy, without message, without resource, and then without credible what? A message that really resonates with the people.
Right.
If you don't have message and you want to go on this route, I'm afraid you won't achieve anything. Threat can never change the course of the people's destiny. It's the people who decide, and when they decide, it's massive.
Dr. Kwame Asante, we're immensely grateful that you took the time to stay with us on this conversation. When the Zoom link fell off or got impacted, you came back. Thank you so much for your time. He's a political scientist at the University of Ghana and head of the Center for European Studies. Mr. Ahiangba, I would really appreciate it if you could make this really brief, especially as the connection to Doc had us have you for a lot more. Just very briefly, concluding comments.
I just want to thank you and reiterate that the New Patriotic Party, our history is evident that we are for peace, we are inherently democratic, and will support this Fourth Republic to persist. But then there's a conversation that must be had. That's a broader conversation to say that the NDC might de-escalate. They are the ones who have a revolutionary route. They are the ones day in, day out threatening this country and our democracy with violence. They must stop talking that way and let peace prevail. Thank you.
Let peace prevail. Richard Ahiangba, Communications Director of the New Patriotic Party. The verdict is still out there. I was hoping to hear from some members of Brian Echampong's constituency in Abetifi. I didn't see anybody identifying himself or herself as such. We'll take a breather here, and when we return, we'll be telling you about the health workers in Jantwa Chrome, a remote farming community, and how Zipline's drone system is helping them in their work. Do stay with us on the AM show. We'll be right back. Well, from the hard politics and the commentary, let's talk health. Now, residents in Jantwa Chrome, health workers as well, in that farming community and the Amenfi central area of the Western region, are happy about how zipline drones are positively impacting healthcare in that area. Now, according to them, zipline has added on to their lives, so to speak. It has made healthcare better in that community. My own colleague Samuel Kojo-Brace had an interaction, and we'll be sharing that with you shortly about how we can consolidate these gains that have been made in the health sector. But first, let me introduce the guests who will be joining me right before we get into what zipline drones have on offer. Dr. Fred Adomako-Boateng is Bono East Director of Health. A very good morning to you, Doc. Doc, you would have to unmute.
Sorry, good morning.
It's really good to have you. I get excited each time I have you. I don't know why, but it must be what you add to the conversation. So thank you so much for making the time once more. We also have Dr. Osei Kufuor-Afre. He'll be joining the conversation. He is the Regional Director of Health for the Oti region. So Bono East Director of Health and the Regional Director of Health for the Oti region. But for now, gentlemen, Samuel Kojo-Brace's package on zipline drones in Jantua Krom.
This is Jantua Krom, a farming community, 3 hours drive from Asankragwa, the municipal capital of the Amenfi West municipality of the Western region. This remote village is home to a tight-knit community of people who farm for a living. Their community is unfortunately connected by a terrible road network. The community has a chips compound, which serves as the main source of healthcare for the people here and the many others surrounding this community. However, the chips compound is plagued by several challenges. Ben Mieza is in charge of the Jantua Krom chips compound.
Very challenging, but we are managing. Yes, very challenging. There is no light, and the staff do not have quarters for accommodation. So we are just managing, but it's challenging. Where we stay, we do not have permanent accommodation, so we use some of the facility as staff accommodation. And during that, we can't have space for both male and female when we are to detain people. For instance, somebody coming to labor and you need a space. A male too is occupying that same ward. It's either you decide the male to go home or to refer and attend to the delivery, or you let the delivery go ahead. It might be that the person might deliver on the way, and it's very bad. So we are just seeking that if it will be possible to get anybody to come and help us to have accommodation for staff, it will be very good for us.
Lack of electricity affects them badly because they are unable to store vaccines and other critical medicines.
We are supposed to vaccinate children every month. We have to move to the nearest community that's or down controls for vaccine, come and use them. After that, you have to send it back, which also affects us. If in transport, there can be anything. If there is vaccine here, we use it and keep it. But because you don't have a vaccine fridge and light, you have to go and put the vaccine in the light. You can get accident on the way, and that is a fact. If we're having our own light, we're getting a fridge and we're putting our vaccines here. Even in some of the things that we use, especially oxytocin, they are supposed to be in a cold pack. We don't have light here, so there's no fridge for you to keep the oxy, and it's also a problem. So if you have light, so many things can be done, and health delivery will be very smooth for all of us.
The chips compound, due to the distant nature of the community, had been battling with the difficulty in transporting their medical supplies, such as vaccines, to the facility. But today, with the drone services provided by Zipline, medical supplies including vaccines are supplied directly to the chips compound, bypassing the poor road infrastructure that otherwise made it difficult to transport medical supplies.
As for that one, by God's grace, we have been enlisted on it. So our vaccines that we talk about, is the drone that brings to us some drugs. If we get shortage of drugs, we request and they bring it. So as for that one, incidentally and by God's grace, and our municipal director
the health director and other people, by their help, we've been able to get that thing. So that for that, we thank them for that. But we are just seeking that they help us with the light, because as for that one, it is affecting us.
This SHIPS compound is faced with a lot of challenges, from inadequate rooms to cater for patients to not well structured maternity delivery bed. But there's a spark of hope here. It's because the drone services by Zipline has been serving this community adequately. The in charge is excited by this. Ben Meza took me through how the drones deliver product to them.
So just in front of the facility, there is a space there. So they came for a survey, and they saw that there are no trees there. The place is very plain. So when we request about in 30 minutes, 40 minutes, the drone will just come, and when it gets here, it gets down a little, open up, and the thing falls. We pick it, no damages. And as for that, we are grateful to whoever who brought it. Yes, it brings from vaccines to medication to family planning commodities. Anything that we need that they can provide, they bring it. Yes.
According to him, the drone services have helped them solve their essential needs.
Sometimes you put them in your vaccine carrier on the motorbike. As you are coming, some of the vaccine will get broken. Sometimes the paper on it that contains the batch numbers, they get deleted. And by the time you get here, you are frustrated. But for this, and sometimes you have to spend time. Go, by the time you come, the people have come to queue up, and it's very bad for them, because if somebody comes, the person keeps long, the person will not come back again, irrespective of the things that you tell the person. But for the drones, you just type it, papa, joint chips, we need this. Within the next 30 minutes, the drone will be here. It forces you pick everything, no breakages, everything is there, and it is very convenient. So as for that one day, we cannot compromise on that.
A recent study by ID Insight, an advisory, data analytics and research organization with funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, reviewed drone services decreased the number of days that facilities were without critical medical supplies by 21%. It shortened vaccine stock out by 60% and decreased people being turned down for vaccinations due to issues with inventory by 42%. Zipline's service also increased the types of medicines and supplies that were stocked at health facilities by 10%. So how many times do drones deliver services to Jantua Chrome?
As many as you can, as many as you request, they come. As many, even a day. Sometimes you'll be doing CWC weighing, and maybe you are short of some vaccines. You call them within 30 minutes. You have it. You have, maybe you want to give a certain medication, but you have depleted your stock. Maybe medical staff have not brought it. You just send message to them, and within 30-40 minutes, the drone will be here, and you're okay.
To Ben Meza, with the drone services, the future of healthcare delivery in rural Ghana looks promising.
We have a bright future with this drone system, and it has removed a lot of time wasting, a lot of breakages, and it's exciting. It's exciting because you just sit, just type to them, and sometimes they are customer care too. When you think that they are delaying, when you call them, immediately you call, they pick it and they inform you that this, and they are on point. When they tell you it will land on 10:30. 10:30 you have your vaccine. So we have a brighter future with this drone system in the health sector.
For Meza, whoever brought the idea must be praised.
Anybody who brought it, the person who thought of it, has done very good thing to us. Yes.
From the Ghana Health Service, led by the Director General, Dr. Insia Sari, and the Chief Director of the Ministry of Health, Sir J. Mensah, and various committees that have worked hard. The Parliamentary Subcommittee on Health, all have worked so hard and remain focused and dedicated in ensuring that the use of this important technology is now part of the health delivery architecture of our country.
Jantokrom may be a remote farming community, but thanks to the dedication of the CHIPS compound staff and the innovative solution of zipline and the government, the people of this community are able to live healthier and more connected lives. From Jantokrom, for Joy News, I am Samuel Kojo Brace.
And that is the brief bit we've got from Samuel Kojo Brace, my colleague, who was in Jantokrom in the Amemfi Central area of the Western region. So we're making some strides in that regard. The CHIPS compounds bereft with problems, but at least this is some light at the end of the tunnel. Once more joining me for the conversation, Dr. Fred Adomako-Boateng. We also have Dr. Osei Kufuor-Afre. Dr. Afre, can you hear me now? Right. So let me get to Dr. Fred Adomako-Boateng. First of all, looking at our CHIPS compounds, I'm sure you have some of them in your region as well. What would you say is the state of these health posts?
So thank you, and happy post-Easter to cherished audience. So I just want to take you through to the health system for Ghana Health Service so that people will really have an idea when we talk about the necessity of e-service. So the base for Ghana Health Service is what we call the CHIPS. So I can start. We have the Regional Health Directorate. From the Regional Health Directorate, we go to the District Health Directorate. From the district, we go to the sub-districts. And within the sub-district, we have the communities. And so in the communities, that's where we have the zones. And in the zones, you are supposed to have CHIPS compound for each zone. So that is the unit or the fulcrum for service delivery. So when we come to Buno East, for instance, we have 285 CHIPS compounds. And these are scattered across the 11 districts that we have. And by virtue of the services that the CHIPS compounds are supposed to offer, it behoves that we have some medicines or they don't. So most of the CHIPS compounds that we have deliver basic services. So some of the CHIPS compounds also have midwives. Some do not have midwives. And so by their design, the nature of services that they deliver really will determine the kind of medicines and other things that they will have to have in there. And so from the sub-district, from the community, then you go to the sub-district, the health centers, where the CHIPS compound will also refer to. So I think I would say that scattered across the country are what we call the CHIPS compound, and they are in league with the community that we serve. So that is the state of the compounds that we have. In terms of the service that they are supposed to deliver, it's minor services that they deliver. So minor injuries, minor illnesses that they are supposed to attend to. Some, if they are having midwives, then they would offer delivery services. But if you still don't have midwives attached to the CHIPS, which we call CHIPS with midwives, though when pregnant women come to you, you won't say that, look, I don't have a midwife when they come in labor, so I'm not going to. You have to do what you are supposed to do before maybe you refer. And for instance, when you are in a CHIPS compound and let's say a pregnant woman has delivered in the house, come to you, and the most basic equipment need for the woman is blood. You can't say, oh, as for me, I am a CHIPS compound, I don't store blood, so I'm not going to give you blood, so I'll refer. I want to put the conversation in context. For instance, I'm not supposed to manage people who are bitten by snakes. And the most important medicine that you need to address that is what we call the anti-snake venom. They don't store, but the fact that you don't store them will not say that because you are a CHIPS compound, somebody has been bitten, and the most important medication that will save the person is anti-snake venom. You don't have, so you are referring. So we can go on and on. And for us to see the fact that you are not offering the services by virtue of design, do not preclude or do not prevent people coming to your facility with that illness, because they don't know what you offer and what you don't offer. And they know you are a hospital, whether you like it or not. when people come to the chief's compound, they say you are a health facility and you are supposed to deliver some services. And then so you see who then will mine the chief's compound as we are discussing.
Right.
They are what we call the chief's community health officers or community health nurses or enrolled nurses or midwives. And by basic the training that they are supposed to keep will also even determine the kind of services that they provide, the kind of medicines and non-medicines that they store in the facility. So by design, it's no fault of them that some basic medicines that they are supposed to have, they don't. And then when it comes to delivering the services, it's no fault of theirs that the services that they are supposed to offer to save people, they don't have. But then, when it comes to care, the most crucial aspect of care is emergency services, where the interim management of you can prolong your life. If within about 5 minutes, 3 minutes, the basic care that you need, example, blood, and you are not offered the blood, and we transport you from even wherever you are to Kolegu, Konfanoche, or Mayo Clinic in the States. Because we missed that opportunity, there is no way we can do much for you. And I think during the interaction with the guy, with the health officer from Jantua, he said oxytocin. Oxytocin is the most crucial medicine that you need when women are bleeding. And by virtue of the design for most of our chips compounds, where they cannot store because of the temperature requirements, look, when the woman needs that medicine, the life-saving medicine, and you don't have, that is a challenge. And one of them also, yesterday, when I was told to have this meeting with you, I made all my district directors send me some of the medicines that are supplied by Zip Line, and I said, wow. Look, from where we are at Kintampo to some of Sene East, for instance, I will give Kojo Krum, it's about 4 hours. And from Kojo Krum, which is a sub-district, to some of the chips compound, you have to be on Volta Lake for about 3 hours to get there. And if you have a woman who has delivered and is bleeding, or if you have somebody who has been bitten by a snake, a dangerous one, of course, and this person needs anti-snake venom. This pregnant woman needs oxytocin. This pregnant woman needs what we call misoprostol, what we call cytotec, for just insertion to stop the bleeding, and you don't have, and you see how frustrated you will be. So you in terms of life-saving, I mean, if somebody will need paracetamol, and you can't get the drug paracetamol for that person, and it's not emergency, you can tell me the patient can wait, but not in this instance, where what will save the woman is what? Blood. And yesterday, I had an interaction with one of your 7 o'clock news, and I was telling them, look, at times it's not only the blood that you need. There are specialized form of blood products that you will need, that we call fresh frozen plasma, FFP. That will save the woman. And you don't have it. What are you going to do? And so you see that the discussions that we are having now means that some medicines are very important, but you don't need to stock them, because if you do stock them, what will happen is that they will start. Okay, so you need some quantities that will be located at a vintage point, so that when there is a need for us to have, then you can have it. And by way of the way we do things, we can distribute drugs based on the district. Ashanti 43, Blue is 11, I have 6. But you need that, maybe you give more to Ashanti 43, but at the time of need, it's maybe a half, which is having only 6 districts that we need. And would you imagine the transport, the journey, the distance, that because of where we distributed the drugs, we are going to lose precious lives. So in the context of what we offer services, you see that we need some interventions across board. So these are some of the things that these facilities provide for some of us. Because look, there is no point talking a lot of anti-snake venom in Blue East We can stock and say, okay, looking at the demand, the quantification, you need about 5 for want of better words. What about in the season that you get about 10 or 20, that you need 20 anti-snake venom? What do you fall on?
Yeah.
So these are in the context for me. It comes in handy and it solves a lot of problems for us. And I will give one typical example. For example, if a woman is bleeding and you need blood for this woman, you have to do some process. You have to do some investigation. Take the blood, do cross matching, see which blood that you need. But at that crucial time, you don't have that luxury. The best option that you can do is give this woman O negative blood, a universal blood. It goes for everybody. And where are you going to get that? It's difficult to get this blood type across the country. That's few. So then, if you have a vintage point where we can all fall on in the whole country, then you need to see how you can save life. You know you need blood group O negative. Where are you going to get some? Where I used to work at Doma Intro in the Dambahafo region, we in the community we knew people who were O positive, O negative. So that when there was emergency, we went for them in the community and brought them and begged them to give. But,
wow.
You know, these are all time wasting. If you really, so they are handy. We have their names everywhere in the community. Those who have had.
Wow.
Yes, of course, you need it. So that at any point, you just fall on them. But what about you go and then Ben is going to Accra and it's not in normal?
You know, right? Because I actually fall into that category.
Hey, then you will come for
if I were in your area, you would recruit me.
Yeah, I'll tell Dr. Charity for a great act so that they will locate you, so that they will need you. I mean, these are some of the innovations that you do. So you can see when we have these interventions, how happy we are. We can go on and on. I have the list of the drugs that all my district directors have provided for me by way of these services. They are priceless. You can't really quantify them when there is a need for you to have them. And so, for example, as we said, look, you can give a woman blood, but there is a certain limit by which you can give what we call whole blood. At some point, you don't work. Or even plasma expanders. At some point, you don't work. At some point, what you need is specific, fresh, frozen plasma. And we have it across the country. How many facilities do have it? It's the major facilities like Kolebu, Komfanoche, and then the National Blood Bank that will be able to provide these at just a split second. But for us, we will need it there for us. And even if you have transport, these cases that I've discussed, some of them, Accra Town, is an island community in Sene East, where you will give this woman blood. You have to transport this woman across to Kudukrom, then to Kudukrom Health Center. Then you have to transport this woman towards Sene Amidanso Hospital, where there are doctors who can attend to. If you have your blood on this woman, you will save this woman. 3 hours, 2 hours, it gets to the facility, this woman is taken care of. If somebody has been bitten by a snake, we have 2 types of problems that they can have. Either it will affect the nerves or it will affect the blood vessels that they bleed. You have the anti-snake, you give it to them, you transport this person to wherever the person is going, and the person will be taken care of. This woman is bleeding, you have your oxytocin, you have misoprostol, which is given to you, you give, you insert, and this woman is transported. So in terms of service delivery, an emergency service delivery, and I always say, look, the test of your health system is how you're able to manage and deliver emergency services, because that is crucial, and that is the life-saving time that you can really do something about it. That is the test of your services. And the other test of your services, your maternal mortality ratio and rate, how well your mothers after delivery are able to come out alive. That is your test. How come robust your health facility? And these are the things that really support you in dealing with them. So you notice that for a long time in Ghana, the leading cause of deaths were what we call blood, postpartum hemorrhage. Now it's overtaken by tension. For us in Ghana, The last one, 2021, the leading one actually is still bleeding. Though there are some causes of mismanagement that would then lead to this kind of misbleeding. But be as it may, if you really have blood, that is what life-saving that. So that is what I would say, that in terms of the context and structure, we have chips. The chips is the lowest. They have some services that they can deliver. They have some services that they cannot deliver. And so they have services they can deliver or they cannot deliver. Sickness, we don't know that. So at any point in time, they will come.
So walk us through a few of them. What they are the very bottom. They are like the places you would go to as a first port of call. But what services do they deliver? What services don't they deliver? It's also important we put that out there so that people know and realize maybe that if you have a certain category of illness, or maybe if something specific is happening to you, that may not be the first place to go to, unless maybe it's an emergency. Just give us a fair idea what the dynamics are.
Okay, so thank you. So we have the chips. Who are those who are at the chips compounds or the chip zones? They are what we call community health officers. And basically, these are the caliber that we need, community health officers. Who are these community health officers? They are either community health nurses, community enrolled nurses who have been given specialized training, at least 2 weeks. Now we have some abridged forms where they are classified as community health workers. What do they do? So some of the CHIPS compound, you can also have midwives. And so some nowadays, we call it CHIPS Plus. And that we have some maternity attached where we do ANCs and delivery. What do they do? Mainly, their activities are preventive in nature. And when we say preventive, so typically speaking, by design, they are not clinics. Like you go to a hospital, when you are sick, you go to a hospital, you wait for a doctor or a pharmacist or a nurse to know. By design, they are not supposed to be.
I like the way you say by design, because the plan is one thing and the actual is another thing, isn't it?
I agree with you, Eben. I agree with you. But you know, and that is where the education should come for all of us. Because some of us will say, what do you mean it's not creative, it's not clinical? We associate any care with somebody is sick and is taking care of and giving medicines. It's more of preventive nature, more than curative measure. And when we say preventive measure, what are they supposed to do? You know, the chips are supposed to, that zone, they are supposed to enumerate almost all pregnant women, all children under 5 within that community. And they are supposed to have a register. And when they have that register, what they are supposed to do is that every child who is supposed to be vaccinated is vaccinated. 1. Every pregnant woman is captured, and that pregnant woman is going for her ANC. If they are not going for ANC, it behoves on this officer to make sure to find out why they are not going. And then what do? They also make sure that people who have defaulted in medicines, they go for TB drugs, they didn't go, they are alerted and they go. So that is the basic design that they do. And they also go to what we call outreach services. So in the communities where they are, they have some points where they go, and then people will come like CWC, Child Welfare Clinic, to bring your children, they immunize them. And because they have registered them, they will know every child has been vaccinated. It's a brilliant concept. And all of us will be captured when we are able to implement it. Any delivery in the community is supposed to be captured by the community officer. Every death within the community is supposed to be captured by the community health officer. So they have days that some particular time, every house within a catchment area should be visited by these CHIPS community health officer. So that is the basic design. And so they do what we call home visits also. They visit homes where they look at community and they are able to look at the community, a kind of sanitation. They're able to diagnose the problems that are supposed to come within the community by virtue of maybe the behavior practices in that community. So that is what we mean. It's more preventive, and that is the design. Notwithstanding, when they are in their facility and somebody comes with minor illness, there is a small cut on your hand. They should be able to manage that. When you come with fever and able to look at, look, this fever is not a severe one. It's a basic, normal, what we call uncomplicated malaria. They have medicines that they are supposed to treat. So these are the design by which, if you default, and as those with the midwives, if you come, you can have your ANC there, and in that particular ANC, you're able to notice that this A kind of pregnancy is a high risk one. Has no business. The midwife has no business attending to that high risk pregnancy within the community.
Right.
He's supposed to refer it to what? A higher.
Right.
So by this, and if they're able to do this very well, they're able to pick all high risk pregnancies there. And by design, and if they are able to work very well, they'll be able even to pick some of the women, pregnant women who are living offshore, island communities. During their expected dates, they come and stay there. So that's another concept, pregnancy school, they should be able to do that, and then you bring it for them, and they are able to make sure that you deliver with it. So in the concept of the community chips, that is what the fathers were thinking about. And so if you look at most of the problems that we are discussing, many of them are preventive. For example, somebody who had 2 previous cesarean sections, you have no business going to the chips to deliver. In fact, you have no business going to a health center to deliver. But then if you don't really go out and look for them, how do you get them?
Right.
So that is the design.
So there's an education or an educational deficit there as well. Because some cases that go to the CHIPS compounds shouldn't even be there, but people simply do not know. And it may also be about access. This is closer to me, but a hospital facility is many miles or kilometers away. So I would rather go here.
Yes. So the concept in the implementation of the CHIPS concept is more of a community involvement thing. If we are able to go through the processes very well, we have about what we call 6 milestones and 13 implementation steps. And these are thorough.
Right.
That if we are able to go through all these milestones, and under the milestones, we have the implementation steps. That even in the formation and in the functionality of these CHIPS compounds, we have what we call Community Health Management Committee, who are really drawn from the community. And they are supposed to support the community health officer in delivering the services. Their roles and responsibilities are some of these things that we are discussing. The ability for us to really educate the community, for us to know the CHIPS compounds can do, what it cannot do. All of us will come to that agreement that, look, when it comes to this and that, this is beyond the compound. And so in some communities, we have what we call community emergency transport system. It's beautiful. Where the community came up with some transport, some form of abubuya, and it's more different from abubuya kind of pragia, where they have added some facility to that so that they will be able to transport these pregnant women. And I think one of these is, and I will invite you to Ebnois, and then I'll take you to...
Please do. I would love that.
So that I will take you step by step. Every quarter, these community health management committee members, we are not able to sing the good things that we do too much as Ghanaians. in the kind of good things that we do, we have been trained like that. Where the community themselves are going to enforce that, look, this kind of problem, you can't go to this area. It's more of a community ownership involvement thing, more than the health system. We will healthcare. We will deliver the care, the services, but the support is from the community. And this community health management committee is so pivotal and crucial in the delivery of services. You know that even it's a community health management committee, which is supposed to provide security for the CHIPS compound. I mean, look, go to Upper West, go to Upper East. It's so beautiful. Where they even do farming for the community health officer, they paint, they provide the basic care. All that you do as a healthcare officer is to deliver the care that you have been trained for. So that is the concept for the CHIPS compound. So from the CHIPS...
Go ahead. Wrap on that point before I come in.
So from the CHIPS, the next point of referral is what we call the health center. And that is the missing gap in the Ghana health service. Every time we will have discussion about. So you have a number of CHIPS compounds, and then the number of CHIPS compounds is served by a health center, which is a sub-district. But what actually has happened with some time is that most of the CHIPS centers have been developed so much to the detriment of the health centers. And I think that is the vision of the Director General Ghana Health Service, Ministry of Health. And I think at appropriate time, we'll talk about what we call network of practice with a model health center, which is actually trying to boost give these referral systems, and then some of these problems that we are discussing will be addressed. Because what is happening is that this middle point, there is a missing gap, so that health centers straight away refer to clinics, and the gatekeeper system of the health center is challenged. And I think at appropriate time, we will discuss this. So in context, you see the reason why some of these services that we are having is so important that by design, this facility is not supposed to provide these services.
Right.
That do not prevent those problems coming. So when these problems come, we should have an interim measure to support them before others are done.
A two-pronged question. Let me find out from you. How about the coverage of these drone services? Are they up to scratch? Are they what we would have them be? Is there more that can be done? We've heard the Vice President talk about the fact that it's the largest drone delivery service in the world. But the coverage, is it what we expect? Can more be done? And are there other things, like I said, that ought to be done to ensure the effectiveness of these drone delivery services? What would be your response to that?
Ben, there is more to be done.
Your response would be?
There is more to be done.
Right.
By the discussions that we just had, we have over 1,000 CHIPS compounds. And whether we like it or not, they are providing services. So the best for us is that all these CHIPS compounds are hooked to one form of these zipline operation centers, as we are discussing. Because whether we like it or not, maybe one day you have never managed a person who has been bitten by a snake, but one day you have. And based on the way we do our quantification and forecasting, look, if for about 5 years I have never gotten any snake bite, why should I put that in the budget and request? I mean, naturally, you don't do that. But you never know when you have that problem. And you're saying that, look, I don't take care of deliveries. When people are due for deliveries, they'll go to maybe Basa. Basa is one of the sub-district health centers in Sene. You say, I don't. No, you wait to have somebody who has delivered in the house and come to you. So by virtue of the services we provide, whether you like it or not, if you are providing a self-service, you have to be mapped or to be hooked to one of these. And they have not done. So they have to be supported to be able to do that. I mean, for example, we in Noise are trying to still extend. They are trying to have the places where they do this. We have our services from Kratchi, you know, the one at the Kratchi.
Yeah.
Supply that far east, and the one at Mampong supply the Nkranza, those areas zone. So, and I think if you talk to if Dr. Frey or say Kofo will come and the other Western North will come, See, we have a lot of these hard-to-reach areas. You come to Bunu East, and I'll tell you that when we say Bunu East, we are talking about...
Some of these are even island communities, island areas, islands.
Yeah. So definitely, we have done all the mapping, but they have to be supported so that all these... And you see that it's very cost-effective. Very cost-effective. Rather than giving 10 anti-snake to Bunu East, 10 to Bono, 10 to what? I have 30. And at the end of the day, I will use one. But these are emergency drugs that you need them anyway. You get the point. You need them. You don't say that because because emergency will never announce. So why spread it so 10, 30, 10, 10, rather than even having, let's say, 10 at an area where this 10 can be effectively used in the discussion. That's what we are talking about. Rather than saying that, look, people will come and deliver. So I will need about 20 ampoules of, let's say, oxytocin in Bunu East, 20 in Bunu, 20 and a half for 60. And at the end, I will use about 15.
So the apportioning in that sense, do you think we're getting it right?
Yeah, so we have the minimum emergency drugs that you have to stock, whether you like it or not.
Right.
It's a basic minimum that you need. But the fact that you have stocked them doesn't mean you use them. And that's the discussion that we are having. So rather than stocking them in Bono East, Bono Ahafo, can we have a central location? And by means of central location, the delivery time should be so effective so that if I need this...
That is using the drones.
The drones, that is the point. Any means by which I can get it within some time. Even the bleeding that we are discussing, when women have delivered and are bleeding, and you delay for some time without giving them blood, it enters into what we call disseminated intravascular coagulation. Whatever you do, it's late. Do you understand? So it means that not only having the medicines when the medicine, but the time.
Right.
The time is also very important. So you will have to deliver it within some period. And that's what we are discussing, that then other interventions then will come in play. So that one, you have the minimum stock for maybe even the central zone. You have the mini stock for the southern zone. You have a mini stock for the northern zone. And you can even have a mini stock for the coastal zone.
Right.
And these are when you need them. And it will surprise you that it will come to a quarter, a period. Only one of maybe the regions will consume all the stock. The beauty of these kind of services that... So you see that it's very resource optimization. Is key.
And that's an interesting point you make. And maybe as you say it today and as your health directors and others, I mean, those at the national level also listen to you. I don't know whether there are some conversations that you have started or that have been had in medical circles in that regard, but maybe that is something that we should be looking at moving forward. But in the instance of Jantua Crow, okay, it's a very remote community. Their road network is terrible. If someone had an emergency there, what would you suggest they do?
This is a big one. What do we do? It's based on the kind of emergency that we are having. And the emergencies, we will list them. Ghana Health Service did a work in Amansia West. That is when we are trying to build the telemedicine, where they had a teleconsultation center. And this is also linked to the issue. Look at the remoteness and how this area is so far from expert service delivery. With a phone call, telemedicine, when you even call, the kind of service to deliver, as we said, the nature of training, these people will not be able to deliver that service, isn't it? So when they call, what do they do? Let me give you a typical example of this. Hypoglycemia. When your sugar levels are so low. And the basic thing that you can do then is to check test it and know that the sugar is low. Even if you don't have any medicine, the best thing you can do, if you have any sugar, you can put it in the mouth. Even Fanta, you can get for this person to drink. If you cannot even test, and by nature of where you are, you don't have the strength to test. What do you do? And these are some of the things that come in. You don't need light. If you have these strips flown to you, you can quickly do it. Not only that, by the time it's coming, because you know you have spoken to somebody, he can tell you this can either be what hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia, low sugar or too much. If you are not so trained, you are not trained very well, at times of the clinical presentation will be able to kind of smell and other things, will be able to know whether it's too much sugar, too low sugar.
Right.
You're not able to do that. When you talk to somebody, the person can even add the two interventions. He can add sugar, what we call 5%, 10%, or 50%, or he can add normal saline or Ringer's lactate. In any case, it can solve this problem. It can happen to any of us. Maybe you know the Easter, how many people went for binge. Instead, their celebration price is raising.
Right.
They went to buy bottles. And this person is sleeping. There is not, you touch, the wife touch or husband touch, it's not. You rush to this person. These are the services that can be provided, apart from the logistics and cost and all this. So the fact that the person is in Accra town, in place, you have similar places like Grand Wako, where you have to drive by the fiber boots for about 2-3 hours to get there. Yes, the persons shouldn't be denied services. They have to be taught. They have to communicate. They have to tell us, and we have to tell them what to do. This, the ZIP can do it. Any interventions tailored by this nature can do it.
Right.
And this is important because when you do that, can you imagine, look, when I was a house officer, help me to just allow me to do that. And the first case I got, this person came with hypoglycemia, we checked. And I gave this person the truth, and the person came. Then I believe myself that, wow, I'm a doctor. So these are some of the nice things that you can do that can bring people back to life. You see, it's not expensive. It's not too expensive.
Interesting.
But where people are, they are going to die. And this is not good. Look, if you are talking about universal health coverage, health for all by 2030, these are some of the interventions all of us should come together to make sure that we are strengthened, if also all of us.
It's been really refreshing having this conversation with you, Fred, because the number of matters we've brought up, and like I said, that point you were making about, the centralization, if you like, of stock, because you may put 40 here where 40 parcels of some of these medications or drugs or even vaccines may not be needed, or anti-snake bite, potions may not be needed. Yet in other places where they are needed, there may be constraints. And that is why in harnessing these drone delivery services, we ought to look at how we can centralize. I agree with you, and how we can make the system better. But this is a conversation that we're going to have ample opportunity in the future to talk about. In fact, I am paying a visit to one of their points, their delivery points, or is it departure points in the coming week. So there's a lot that I'm going to be doing from there as well.
2 or 3 days. 2 or 3 days. Now, let me take you through how we deliver services in some of these areas. Come and get first-hand experience. I will take you from the regional health directorate. I'll take you to a district.
So let's do this. Next week, I'm going to one of those communities, but in fact, with Zipline, but sometime in May, after I'm done with my exams, I will take you up on that. So let's plan for May, somewhere in May.
Do that.
And
do that.
I'll come over so we get to know what exactly is happening.
Let's do that.
Dr. Fred Adomaku-Boateng, Bono East Director of Health. Thank you so much, sir, for joining the conversation. And that is it. But before we take a breather, before I take a break, we know water is life, and the best we can give you, Awake, which is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every one of those bottles you're buying on the market refreshes you better. And in terms of size, the kids, when they're going, you can give them 330 ml, potable, portable, and it can be in their kiddie bags. If you want the 500 ml bottles, you can get those as well, 750 ml, and 1.5 liters for the heavy drinkers. So all you need to do now is stay awake while drinking Awake Purified Drinking Water, wherever you go. Now choose a bottle of Awake Purified Drinking Water, and here is an add-on. Here is why. For every bottle you purchase, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. So each time you make a purchase, that's a donation you are making with your money to the National Cardiothoracic Center, so that people with heart issues who can't foot the bills can get some assistance. Isn't that heartwarming? It's another product of Casapreco Company Limited. If you mean to purchase in bulk, this is the number to call: 0262 351 251. 0262 351 251. This advert is FDA approved, and I believe my thirst is also FDA approved. I'm going to take a sip of water. I'll be back after the break. Welcome back on the AM show. We have a few minutes, and wouldn't it be great if we could capitalize on those, make the most of them, and hear from you? Now, we've activated the phone lines: 0302 211 691. 0302 211 691. It's rolling at the bottom of your screen. All you have to do is call that number and let me know from the conversation we just had on the chips compounds, on Zipline's drone delivery services, and again on Brian Echampon's now famous or infamous comments. What are your thoughts? Let's start with Akonoba, who joins us. Akonoba, good morning. Please go straight to the point. Make it as brief as possible.
Hey, I'll go with you.
All right.
Yes. My brother, you see, we have to name and shame politicians irrespective of the party that they are coming from when they make this insightful comment. So you see, when a champion, honorable, and people, you have a hotel there. So assuming the comment that you made, something happened. Will your hotel be there? So I don't understand that anything that they feel like saying, they say, shame on you, Ben Chapo. Shame on you. Shame on you. It's a bad comment to make. Shame on you. Thank you.
All right. So you're saying shame on Brian Echampo for those comments. Well, thank you very much for sharing your sentiments there. We still have a few minutes, maybe about 3 minutes to pick calls if you're so minded to share your thoughts with us. We'd love to hear from you. You can just call that number, 0302 211 691. This morning, I hosted Ras Mubarak, former member of parliament for Kumbungu. He shared his thoughts. He felt the comments were wholly inappropriate. But then we came into the big stories, and I interacted with Dr. Kwame Asasanti, who feels it was mere political talk and propagandist maybe, but political talk all the same. When I interacted with the communications director of the MPP, Richard Ahiagba, for him, he felt, well, it was harmless. There wasn't much to it, and that it was only in response to what had been said prior to this by the NDC. He went as far as bringing in the boot for boot comment of the former president. But anyway, let's go to our last caller now. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, my brother.
Your name, where you're calling from?
My name is John, calling from KJG in the Bono East region.
Right, go ahead, John.
I want to touch on, because of the time factor, I want to touch on Bernard Champion issue. I know Bernard Champion for one thing. I was West Wagon. I was there. Then I was working at Special, that's Medina side. I was staying at Alaju. So I was there. I saw it. And I know what Bernard Champion can do. So when he's saying we have the men, we know what we can do. And they are not ready to hand over to NDC. Remember this, President.
Hello? Hello, John. John, are you there? It's unfortunate. I think we've lost John. He was making a point that based on the precedents, what we've seen, the antecedents, if you like, we cannot take that for granted. Well, thank you all for your commentary. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. But this is where we bring the curtains down on the AM show. It's been another 4 hours of amazing interactions with you and having you watch us and share your thoughts with us. We're always grateful that you choose us on the show. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. Let's look forward to tomorrow. But for now, expect Aisha Ibrahim. She's coming up next with Joy News Desk. You don't want to miss that. Stay for that one.